First of all, my last name is Uchiha. And then there's a Sukuna sealed inside me. I've never tried to reconcile with Sukuna. After confirming he couldn't break through the seal, I started relentlessly exploiting him. With the Mangekyo and Domain Expansion, a powerful bloodline ability like no other was born/release. Without a hint of hesitation, knowing his acting couldn't fool the Third Hokage and others, Kagami always showed his true Uchiha nature. He did not defect, nor would he let the clan be destroyed. The Uchiha clan will rebuild Konoha from its ruins. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Omni-sensei here with, what if I was reborn in Naruto as an UCHIHA and SUKUNA'S Jinchuriki? Part 1. If you enjoy this type of content, please continuously dimension/the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Remember to check out the original story linked in the description. Let's get into the rise of the strongest Uchiha in history without further ado. Chapter 1. Sukuna. Pay your rent. Konoha, year 41. After the lull of the Second Shinobi World War, there was a baby boom, and this happened just as a new batch of kids enrolled in the Ninja Academy. At 5.5 years old, Kakashi was already welcoming new students as a student representative. Hey, Kakashi. Young Obito, wearing his signature goggles, moved closer to the sullen-looking Kakashi with the messy hair. Kakashi, annoyed, nudged Obito away and said, "Idiot, get away from me." Obito, usually carefree, seemed to have something on his mind, shuffling awkwardly, saying nothing yet not leaving. "Obito, do you have something to tell Kakashi?" A girl with purple markings on her cheeks approached. This was none other than Rin Noera, the future member of Minato's squad who would sacrifice her life during the Third Shinobi World War. "Idiot, if you have something to say, say it. The Hokage will be here soon." The Ninja Academy had no fixed curriculum. It had terms every 6 months, accepting new students each time. The length of study was random, usually dependent on the war situation. If there was no war, they could study for a few more years. If there was, they'd graduate early and join the battle. After all, no matter how the Ninja Academy was glorified, in essence, it was still a training ground for assassins. As if making a decision, Obito leaned in close to Kakashi's ear and said, "Kakashi, one of my clansmen is joining today and he's a really scary guy. Especially when it comes to picking on me. Don't be fooled by his appearance. He's really bad. And I heard the clan sent him here just to deal with you." Ow. Tap. A pebble rolled down from the back of Obito's head with a crisp sound. Goggles, it's not good to talk behind people's backs. A bit of background music and cherry blossom petals would make this scene look like something from a cheesy romance drama. Unfortunately, there was none. Jerk. Don't call me Goggles. I'm Uchiha Obito. Got it, Goggles. The boy who spoke had short black curly hair, bright and lively eyes, and an innocent smile. Obito turned red in frustration, and if Rin hadn't held him back, he might have charged at Uchiha Kagami. Uchiha Kagami was the boy's name, sharing it with a subordinate of the second Hokage. He was originally an orphan of the Uchiha clan, adopted by Kagami's wife. To honor her deceased husband, she named him Kagami. Indeed, people here have a habit of doing this. Just like how Uchiha Sasuke was later named after the father of Hiruzen Sarutobi, Sarutobi Sasuke, as a sign of respect and remembrance. Of course, in Fugaka's case, it was likely meant as a sign of submission. Yes, Kagami knew how things would unfold in the future. After all, the day before he transmigrated, he was arguing on a forum about the Konoha timeline, debating it all night. Both sides had their evidence, but neither could convince the other. It was a mess, impossible to untangle. They had agreed to resume the debate the next day, but Kagami never showed up. Well, this is a chance for me to see what the timeline is really like. Looking at the trio before him, Kagami felt a bit nostalgic. If he were just an outsider, he could joke, "Divine Kamui hides the tears." But as a member of the Uchiha, it's not funny at all. If he didn't know that the root cause of the Uchiha massacre stemmed from issues dating back to the village's founding, taking out Obito wouldn't prevent it from happening. Otherwise, Kagami would have already taken him out. Kagami, don't bully Obito. An elderly lady holding a baby approached. The baby, still young, already had a hint of a button nose. This baby was Kagami's foster brother and future sure sway of the body flicker. Sigh, Granny, I'm just giving him a friendly nickname. Look at him getting all worked up as if he wants to hit me. Ah. Rin, let me go. I'm gonna kill him. Beautiful lady, you can let him go. I'd like to see him try to kill me. Watching the two argue at the academy gate, Kakashi shook his head in exasperation. Uchiha Kagami, right? Quiet down and get ready for the entrance ceremony. The Hokage will be here soon. Kids in the ninja world mature fast. In the regular world, a 5 or 6-year-old can barely express themselves fully, while here, the faster ones are already ready to fight and kill. Kagami studied Kakashi with interest. Dead fish eyes Kakashi with the broom head. Twitch, Kakashi's forehead pulsed as he clenched his fists. I am Hatake Kakashi, he emphasized, word by word. This was practically bullying by nickname. His nickname was even worse than idiot. Obito, who had been red with anger, now wore a different shade of red. Ha ha ha. Dead fish eyes with a broom head. Haha MMPH. Rin covered his mouth, nodded at everyone, and dragged Obito, who looked strangely happy, away. Anger, excitement, happiness. TCH, if he gets provoked a little more, he might awaken his Sharingan. Stepping closer to Kakashi, Kagami patted him on the shoulder, giving him a harmless smile. Looking forward to working with you, Kakashi. Granny, you should take Shursui home now, okay? Once the semester started, the not-so-old Hiruzen Sarutobi took the stage and began speaking. It was the same old speech about the will of fire, a doctrine passed down from the first Hokage, unchanged, with vague and contradictory values. The more Kagami listened, the more bored he felt, and his mind wandered into his mental space. In the dimly lit, blood-red mental space, a crimson iron gate divided the area in two. From beyond the seal, a thick scent of blood emanated. Above countless dried corpses hovered a figure, a god of death soaring in a sea of blood. Ryaman Sukuna, named after the mythical two-faced four-armed demon. Sukuna was once a real person who, in the golden age of sorcerers, defeated every sorcerer with his overwhelming power. He was the symbol of evil, the brutal king of curses. Now, two souls from different times and places had converged in the shinobi world. Good morning, Four Arms. On the other side of the seal, a massive shadow loomed, and a pair of blood-red eyes glared ferociously. Brat. I've told you before. Don't look at me without my permission. A terrifying darkness surged forward, but couldn't penetrate the seal. Kagami looked up and smiled, ignoring Sukuna's threats. At first, he was indeed a bit scared, but after a few tests, Sukuna couldn't break the seal and kill him. So Kagami was back in his comfort zone, taunting someone through a screen. Nothing to fear. As he grew older, he realized he even had some control over this seal. You should be grateful you can hide in my body. I heard they're sending Kakarote after you out there. Kakarote? Who is that? Kagami raised his small hand and lightly punched the air. Just someone who can blow up the earth with a punch. Sukuna laughed angrily. Brat, no such person has ever existed. What nonsense are you talking about? Short hair, short-sighted, Kagami smirked, waving dismissively. Forget Kakarote. People here already beat you up long ago. Do you know what that means? It means each one of them could hang you up and thrash you. Enough. The old Sukuna would never have lost his composure like this, but now, this cursed seal left him with zero chance of taking over this brat's body. He couldn't even sense the outside world. Damn it! He just killed Gojo Satoru and hadn't had a chance to savor his victory before being thrown into this cursed place. Damn it! Is the spatial cleave really this strong? In the corner of the seal, Kagami noticed a wisp of dark energy seep through, and he promptly sealed the space again. He skillfully absorbed the wisp, gaining some new slashing techniques. Alright, that's the rent for today. I'll be back after I digest this. Bye-bye, get back here, you brat. In the darkness, Sukuna roared in futile rage. Chapter 2, yes, Uchiha are just this arrogant Uchiha Kagami still can't absorb much of Sukuna's power, similar to how Naruto handled the Nine Tails. He's too young, his body hasn't fully developed. If the Nine Tails were within him, Kagami might try to reconcile with it, but Sukuna? Sukuna is a complete egotist, inherently evil, who takes pleasure in killing women and children. Kagami understands Sukuna clearly. He's merely food for Kagami's growth. Compared to Sukuna, his own Uchiha bloodline is far more worth developing. The Sharingan. In release, at its peak, is mental energy that controls imagination and creates form from nothing. Once he awakens the Mangekyo, he might even gain the power to distort space and time. Sukuna's cursed energy is actually a form of In release. Yin and Yang release represent spiritual and physical energy, respectively. Kagami already possesses the soul of an adult, and with Sukuna as his In release power bank, his spiritual energy is off the charts. Had he not started consciously training his body and controlling his spiritual energy growth at the age of 2, he might have awakened the Mangekyo at 8. In Kagami's view, unless absolutely necessary, awakening the Mangekyo too early isn't ideal. It strains the body too much. Itachi's illness might have been related to awakening the Mangekyo before his body was fully developed. Sadly, Shursui didn't even live long enough to experience side effects. If there had been another case, Kagami might have had a better reference. Obito? Do you think getting a half-white Zetsu body is easy? Wait, maybe. It isn't that hard. Just as Kagami was thinking about how to connect with Tobi, the teacher's voice echoed from the front of the classroom. This afternoon, there's a practical lesson. New students will have their shuriken throwing skills tested. The second Hokage founded the Ninja Academy system, but during his time, it was still in its infancy, more like a jonin with multiple students. It was during the Third Hokage's era that the educational system became formalized, and various ninja clans joined. This system even produced elite ninjas known as the legendary Sannin. More importantly, Orochimaru and Jiraiya came from commoner backgrounds, which speaks volumes. Regardless of the mistakes Hiruzen Sarutobi made later due to his so-called tolerance, masking his weakness, he hasn't fully aged out just yet. Hashirama Senju was invincible, securing the best land. But after his death, 2 shinobi world wars followed. Remember, Konoha was victorious in both shinobi world wars. You may criticize the Third Hokage's morality, but not his skill. As an Uchiha, Kagami does consider the Third Hokage's faction a potential enemy, but he won't underestimate them. As someone without a family, this was his first experience of family warmth, and he would never allow the future annihilation of his clan. Nor would he blindly trust the storyline of the original timeline. With himself and Sukuna as wildcards, following the original timeline would be foolish. Except for fixed major events beyond his control, he would selectively ignore the rest, not allowing them to influence his decisions. Kagami Uchiha, what are you thinking about? Kurenai Yuhi, sitting beside him, gently tapped his shoulder. I'm thinking about how to take down the corrupt forces led by the Third Hokage and your father, who serves as one of his henchmen. Kagami turned his head and ignored her. Compared to the relatively well-adjusted Sasuke, he's more like Itachi in personality. Arrogant, proud, and thinking he can shoulder all consequences on his own. Itachi sacrificed his clan for the village. Kagami is willing to sacrifice the village for his clan. Does Konoha have any reason to exist without the Uchiha? So Kagami has no intention of forming bonds with these people. It's like poison. Obito had the ruthlessness to destroy the clan but didn't reclaim Kakashi's eye, abandoning his invincible stance. Sasuke got tangled with Naruto, that annoying pest, and went on about atonement without taking back his arm. Atonement? For what? A young girl, however, tends to become more interested when you ignore her, provided you're good-looking, of course. Young Kurenai leaned closer. Your hair is a bit curly too. Is it natural? Kagami stood up in annoyance and left to eat his bento outside. Other classmates he could ignore, but Kurenai? She was the talent who could match a Mangekyo user with ordinary genjutsu. Talking to her, Kagami worried it might affect his own intelligence. All that remained was a slightly hurt girl, wondering if she had somehow offended him. Curly hair is pretty cute, isn't it? As Kagami opened his bento, prepared by his grandmother, a few boys approached. Uchiha brat, you're really arrogant, huh? A young Asuma Sarutobi, chewing on a toothpick, stepped forward. Do you know Red is my good friend? Who do you think you are? Kagami continued eating calmly. Not just that. You two will even get married and have children. Asuma's angry expression froze, his face turning red. What are you talking about? And marriage? That's so far off. But the child won't look like you, but rather like an Uchiha, Kagami interrupted. Arg. Get him. Beat him up. It's on me. Fuming, Asuma led the charge. 1 minute later, Kagami sat on Asuma's back, continuing his meal. Now, let me answer your earlier question. With a foot on Asuma's hand, Kagami calmly stated, yes, we Uchiha are just that arrogant. Don't think I'm some weakling with goggles. Arg. If you have guts, let me go. I wasn't ready just now. As more and more students gathered around, Asuma's face grew even redder with embarrassment. What do you think this is? A playground fight? A do-over? Finishing his meal, Kagami stomped Asuma's hand into the ground. Crunch. A faint sound, maybe of a bone breaking. Kagami turned and fixed his cold gaze on Asuma, who dared not move. If this were a battlefield, I would have killed you by now. The genuine killing intent in that moment sent a chill down Asuma's spine. Casting a glance at the growing crowd, Kagami quickly concealed his killing intent and walked away as the kids instinctively cleared a path for him. He didn't pretend to be kind or try to get along with his classmates. He wasn't confident enough to fool the Third Hokage's old faction with an act. In their eyes, a typical Uchiha is always one spark away from an explosion. Act like a coward? That's something Fugaku would do. An Uchiha prodigy should be sharp, arrogant, unrestrained. The relationship between the village and the Uchiha hasn't deteriorated to the point of killing young talents in cold blood. Otherwise, Kakashi and Shursui wouldn't have made it past 10. When that day does come, Kagami's eyes darkened, hiding a madness that could rival Sukuna. Only a monster can tame a monster. Chapter 3 My Fire, Your Regret. Uchiha Kagami, hailed as a once-in-decades genius of the Uchiha clan. A few kids gathered together, listening intently, with bruised and battered Asuma paying particular attention. Though Obito Uchiha disliked Kagami and was disliked by him in return, seeing even the Third Hokage's son getting beaten up made him feel a sense of pride in his clan. Since he beat up Asuma, it means it's not just me he's targeting. I heard his Uchiha-style taijutsu is already at the level of the police force, and he's already mastered fire release jutsu. Kakashi, who hadn't initially been paying much attention, became a little more interested at this point. Many Uchiha clan members didn't participate in the village's ninja ranking evaluations, but being a police force member was generally accepted as proof of at least Chunin-level combat ability. Could a 5 or 6-year-old really reach that level? Thinking about his own strength, Kakashi realized it wasn't impossible. He was already planning to apply for early graduation, and his father believed he possessed strength comparable to an average Chunin. That afternoon, there was a practical combat lesson that all students had to participate in. To allow recovery time, the Third Hokage decided to extend the usual 3-year curriculum to 6 years. However, most of the current students were born after the Second Ninja War and were only around 5 or 6 years old, with few upperclassmen. Only a few years later, the Third Ninja War would break out, reverting the curriculum back to 3 years. Asuma wasn't the type to run and tell after getting beaten up. He wanted to settle the score himself. So he sought out Obito to gather information. But Obito, usually defeated with just 1 or 2 hits, didn't know much and could only offer some mixed rumors. Asuma, Kagami won't participate in actual combat training, Rin Noera said kindly, tending to Asuma's wounds as he and Obito planned. He's a new student, so today he'll only be demonstrating shuriken throwing. And besides, you were the one who provoked him first. Just let it go. How can I just let it go? Asuma groaned in frustration. Getting beat up would have been fine on its own, but that guy actually insulted Kurenai. Unforgivable. Next match, Kakashi vs Uchiha Obito. In the arena, the teacher began calling names. Kakashi sighed. Why did he keep facing Obito and Guy? He didn't care for these boring practice sessions and often ended up fighting these two underdogs. Obito, however, lit up upon hearing his name. Yes. This time, I'm definitely going to beat you, Kakashi. Boring. Hold on. A voice cut through suddenly as Uchiha Kagami stepped forward from the crowd. Sensei, I'd like to take Obito's place. Huh? Kagami, you've only just enrolled. Ignoring the teacher, Kagami walked straight up to Kakashi, a finely crafted small blade sliding out of his dark blue sleeve into his hand. Kakashi's pupils narrowed. The blade was only about 60 to 70 centimeters long, not something a child could hide in a sleeve. That's a ninja tool summoning technique. With a father like Tsukumo Hatake, Kakashi knew more than the average student, which was why he felt there was no need to waste time in the academy. Kagami smirked. Obito's been bringing shame to the Uchiha. An Uchiha shouldn't be an underdog. This is my reward from the clan elder. I'm here to defeat you and reclaim Uchiha's position at the top. Shirayuki, a beautiful blade. As one of the oldest ninja clans, the Uchiha had treasures unmatched by other families, despite many being taken by Madara. This was a weapon on par with the Kusanagi blade, crafted from chakra metal. Even Orochimaru had managed to collect a few Kusanagi swords, so naturally, the sword-skilled Uchiha would have some as well. Kagami had absorbed a lot of Sukuna's spiritual energy, displaying remarkable swordsmanship talent, and this aptitude made the clan elders view him as the next Uchiha Izuna. Madara was beyond their reach, but only those who lived through that era truly understood. Hashirama and Madara had reached levels beyond any ninja. Watching Kagami approach, Kakashi took his own sword case off his back. Just from Kagami's stance and aura, even without the blade drawn, Kakashi could feel his sharpness. He wouldn't shy away from this fight. His actions already conveyed his willingness to accept the challenge. Hold on. The teacher stepped between them, laughing wryly. It's fine if you want a sparring match, but no ninja tools. And Kagami, don't bring something that dangerous here. The teacher, an experienced chunin, noticed the explosive tag Kagami was holding in his other hand. Why did you have an explosive tag? Really? I thought it'd be easier to distract him with the blade and hit him with an explosion, Kagami replied, reluctantly putting the tag back and attaching the blade to his waist. Kakashi, now noticing the tag, felt a bead of cold sweat form on his forehead. Is this guy insane? Kagami took his stance and beckoned to Kakashi. Come on. Kakashi frowned, saying indifferently, You're the challenger here. Kagami smirked, as if reminded of something amusing. Just a friendly reminder, the last guy who said that was cut in half. Form the seal of confrontation. The seal of confrontation, the teacher shouted, trying to make his presence felt. Kagami complied, raising 2 fingers, then motioned for Kakashi to bring it on. How arrogant! Kakashi returned the seal of confrontation. Before the teacher could even call begin, the next moment, boom! A cloud of dust erupted as the 2 small figures clashed. Kakashi's body flashed, his fist aiming straight at Kagami's chest. Kagami sidestepped and swiftly grabbed Kakashi's wrist, attempting to throw him. Kakashi wasn't so easily handled. Planting his left foot firmly, he stabilized himself and aimed an elbow strike at Kagami's abdomen. Kagami let go, leaping back to avoid the attack. You're strong. That brief exchange told Kakashi Kagami was, at least as strong as him. Kagami threw a palm strike toward Kakashi's face, laughing, You're not bad. Their movements were lightning fast, punches and kicks weaving and shifting in a flurry of techniques. Every clash echoed with a dull thud, tension filling the air. Incredible. Kakashi's amazing. And that new student is amazing too. They're so fast. I guess Kakashi was holding back all this time. This is youth. Are these really students? Even the Chunin teacher was in awe of the strength displayed by these 2. Kakashi was strong, as he had always known. But the Uchiha boy matched him effortlessly. And judging by their expressions, Kagami seemed more relaxed. In the Hokage's office, when there was no urgent business, Hiruzen Sarutobi enjoyed using his telescope jutsu to observe the academy, keeping an eye on these young seedlings as they grew. Watching the fierce battle in his crystal ball, he felt Konoha's future was bright and promising. Being a ninja was a dangerous career, and competition like this was natural. Bonds would grow through this competition, forming the branches that connected the leaves of Konoha. The relationship between the Uchiha and the village could perhaps change, starting with these children. Holding on to his hopes for the future, Hiruzen didn't scold Danzo for barging in without knocking. After observing for a while, Danzo muttered in a low voice, That Uchiha kid is a genius. Indeed. Hiruzen took a puff of his pipe, smiling. Kakashi's talent is already high, but I didn't expect this child to be so strong. Since Minato Namikaze had already begun to show great promise, Hiruzen refrained from calling Kakashi the best. After all, even Kakashi couldn't quite measure up to Minato. Hiruzen, this kid is a typical Uchiha. I've investigated. He's close to the radical faction within the Uchiha. Hiruzen's relaxed expression slowly tightened. Give him a few years in school, and he'll understand the importance of his comrades in the village. You still don't understand. The more talented the Uchiha, the more uncontrollable they are. Danzo's tone was cold. Let me train him in secret. Only my methods can make him useful to the village. Hiruzen shook his head without hesitation. Impossible. I will never allow a child of the village to join Root. More importantly, now was not the time to provoke tensions with the Uchiha. In the shadows, Danzo's single eye glinted darkly. Have you forgotten Lord Tobarama's warning? The Uchiha are born of evil. Your dream of reconciliation is impossible. Danzo, I am the Hokage. Hiruzen's eyes narrowed slightly, smoke swirling around him. Hiruzen, you'll regret this. Asterisk bang. With a loud bang of a door closing, the conversation ended unpleasantly. Chapter 4. Someday, I will break the seal. Serpent ram monkey boar horse tiger. That was. After a brief clash, Uchiha Kagami quickly weaved hand signs, shocking the teacher into shouting. All students. Scatter. Kakashi's pupils shrank as he reacted swiftly. Fire release, great fireball technique. Earth release, earth-style wall. The great fireball technique, a signature jutsu of the Uchiha clan, was widely known throughout the ninja world. Almost every Uchiha learned this technique as their first jutsu. Having heard from Obito that Kagami knew fire release, Kakashi assumed he could use the great fireball technique. So, as soon as Kagami started weaving signs, Kakashi was ready. Boom. The raging fireball shattered the earth wall. Kakashi had made the correct counter, but he had underestimated the power of Kagami's jutsu. Damn it! The Chunin teacher felt things going wrong and moved instantly to rescue Kakashi. Poof. Just before the flames reached him, Kakashi's body exploded into a puff of smoke, leaving only a broken piece of wood. A substitution jutsu. When did he? Poof. Kagami spun around and ducked, meeting Kakashi's punch from behind as he emerged from the ground. The intense taijutsu battle resumed. This is a real ninja fight, whispered Obito, forgotten in the corner, his eyes full of disbelief. And a little bit of frustration. The Uchiha clan revered strength, and he frequently heard his clan members praising Kagami. But when their eyes fell on him, Rin Noara, noticing, gently patted Obito's shoulder and smiled. You're amazing too, Obito. I believe you'll become a great ninja someday. MHM. The shadows clouding Obito's heart vanished with Rin's smile. Madara was truly perceptive. Had Rin lived, Obito would never have unlocked the Mangekyo. You should be thankful to Lord Madara for his gift, Obito. Earth release, earth wave. Among his peers, Kakashi's chakra reserves were exceptional. The earth wave, a lesser earth-style jutsu, sent waves through the ground, disrupting Kagami's movement. Among those under 10 I faced, Kakashi, you're the strongest. Kagami leaped over the waves, a faint smile on his face throughout. But I'm tired of this game. Your essence is lacking. As soon as he spoke, a scarlet light reflected in Kakashi's eyes. An image of a monstrous god of blood crashed into his mind, freezing his body and spirit. Sharingan Genjutsu, Special Edition by Sukuna. Kagami's double Tomo Sharingan spun as he approached Kakashi, resting his hand on the hilt of Shirayuki. A hand landed on his shoulder. The teacher's voice was slightly trembling. Enough. You've won, Kagami. Looking down, the teacher saw Kagami's scarlet eyes and swallowed nervously. He had heard of a 5-year-old prodigy in the Uchiha clan. But to awaken double Tomo so soon? Whether he had awakened at an earlier age or evolved to double Tomo at 5, both were terrifying. The arena fell silent. Everyone watching Kagami's fight with Kakashi hadn't expected Kagami to win, but they couldn't understand how Kagami had won at all. Until Kagami's gaze swept over them, the scarlet glow falling upon their eyes. Even as kids, they knew what this meant. One of the 3 great dojutsu, the ultimate symbol of the Uchiha, the Sharingan. Kagami was pleased with their reverent expressions. This is right. The Uchiha don't need bonds. You only need to bow down and admire me. Even without the Sharingan, he was confident he could have beaten Kakashi. But why hide it? A person's character is influenced by their environment, education, and another crucial aspect, their body. Poor lungs lead to sadness. A troubled liver leads to anger. A weak stomach leads to resentment. With the Uchiha's keen intellect, it's only natural to be arrogant. Acting meek in silence? That would make him another Fugaku. Kagami's character was shaped by the Uchiha genetic influence, but mostly by his own attitude. In his past life, he had no family or friends. If he had been born in ancient times, he would have been treated as an unstable element, trained as an assassin. But here, the sky is the limit when the ocean ends. His eyes lost their scarlet hue as Kagami spoke indifferently. My name is Uchiha Kagami. I don't like arrogant challenges, being disturbed while I eat, or Obito Uchiha. Obito Uchiha. In the Hokage's office, the smoke was thick beyond belief. Watching the scene in his crystal ball, Hiruzen Sarutobi frowned deeply. This child needed proper guidance. He summoned his secretary and spoke solemnly. Jiraiya's training Minato lately, right? Yes, Hokage-sama. They're currently in the Forest of Death for training. Hiruzen pondered for a moment, ultimately deciding not to act too soon. For now, let the child stay in the academy. Maybe interaction with his peers would soften his personality. If that didn't work, perhaps Minato, the little son, could shine on this Uchiha boy. In Minato, Hiruzen saw a radiance that could unite everyone, brighter than his ninjutsu talent. If not for his performance in the training ground, Kagami would seem far more well-behaved than Obito. He never disrupted class or fell asleep, though he also ignored the teacher whenever asked a question. Kagami had already mastered the Ninja Academy curriculum. Walking on water and trees were child's play, and he had nearly completed his clan's chakra nature transformation lessons. The ultimate form of chakra nature transformation was the Rasengan. He wondered if Minato had developed it yet. This was also Kagami's current goal, and he had the full lesson plan and a standard solution to work from. If he could master it before Minato, then the Uchiha would be the rightful creators of the Rasengan. Minato Namikaze? If you weren't Jiraiya's student, I'd accuse you of plagiarism. Of course, everything depended on Kagami creating the Rasengan first. Sitting quietly, Kagami let his consciousness dive into his spiritual space. Before a massive gate, Kagami sat down and began his training. The Rasengan had 3 stages: rotation, power, and sustain. Kagami was stuck at the 3rd stage. The Rasengan was like a miniature typhoon focused in his palm, with sustaining it being the hardest part. Kid, what's happening out there? And what's up with those eyes of yours? Kagami had infused his Sharingan Genjutsu with Sukuna's cursed energy as an experiment. It had worked well. If not for the head teacher's intervention, Kakashi would have been stuck there till morning. It also allowed Sukuna to sense a bit of the outside world. Chakra was a perfect fusion of mental and physical energy, while cursed energy originated from negative emotions, only one type of mental energy. To Sukuna, all of those kids outside had cursed energy. He even sensed a few strong cursed energies nearby, equivalent to top-class sorcerers. This density of powerful individuals was highly abnormal. Most importantly, it was the first time he had directly sensed Kagami's eyes. Though they didn't seem harmful to him now. It was like comparing himself, a wild bull, to Kagami's Sharingan, which was more like a lion, or rather, a dragon egg. He had an inkling that if these eyes hatched, they could shatter his immortal body effortlessly. In a spare moment, Kagami glanced at him, saying, "That's why it's so annoying. Other people get powers instantly or have systems that give them quests, and here I am with someone like you, stuck halfway." Kid, what did you just say? Calm down, Sukuna. This world is far more dangerous than you realize. Beings that can kill you are everywhere, so lose that needless recklessness. Listen to me obediently, and you might even get the chance to be summoned as my familiar. Sukuna seemed to understand familiar and sneered. Before I reach the peak of this world, I care nothing for begging. Compared to me, you're the one with no sense of your limits. With your meager power, you dare reveal yourself to others. I'm nothing like you. Kagami smiled slightly as the chakra orb in his hand grew a bit more stable. If I die, it means I wasn't worth much to begin with. I'll never cower to survive like you. Scarlet eyes met the god of death hidden in the darkness. I'm fully aware of my insignificance. Does that mean I should hide? To face the impossible, Sukuna, you've lost the most vital instinct of humanity. You're nothing more than a powerful beast. So you'll serve as my mount, and I'll be the one to guide you. Kid, you're merely a commoner relying on this unknown cage to bind me. Don't talk big. Kagami leaned closer to the seal, smirking. Sukuna, someday, I'll open the seal, I put the leash on you. Chapter 5. Uchiha. After his explosive performance on the first day, no one dared approach Uchiha Kagami in the days that followed. During the day, he'd feign sleep while training the Rasengan in his mental space. In the evenings, he'd work on physical ninjutsu, and at night he'd study theory, getting a solid 7 hours of deep sleep each night. Kagami's life was fulfilling. Kakashi, who had initially planned to graduate early, temporarily gave up on the idea after his defeat. He doubled his already intense training routine, waiting for his strength to soar so he could redeem himself. Taking advantage of a rare moment when his father, Tsukumo Hatake, was home, Kakashi voiced the question weighing on his mind. Father. Kagami's Sharingan felt different. I've seen Uchiha using the Sharingan before, but that feeling was hard for Kakashi to put into words. Tsukumo smiled, patting his head. Did it feel more intense? Kakashi thought that wasn't quite right, but he couldn't come up with a better description. I have Uchiha friends. Their eyes aren't as easy to awaken as the Hyugas. They usually need to go through something special or emotionally intense. That child Kagami, awakening his Sharingan so young, he must have gone through something painful. Kakashi, you should help him out of his hardships. Kakashi looked a bit confused. That guy didn't really seem like he'd gone through any deep suffering. Although Kagami didn't cause trouble at school, he did enjoy bullying Obito Uchiha. Lately, Obito hadn't bothered him, sticking with Asuma and others to plan revenge on Kagami. With less noise around, Kakashi even felt a bit more at ease. Brushing aside those thoughts, he voiced his main purpose. Father, I want to learn your swordsmanship. Tsukumo ruffled his hair again, feeling proud. He didn't want Kakashi to graduate early either. While the academy offered little to keep Kakashi there, he had only agreed to apply for early graduation because Kakashi insisted. Now that he wasn't bringing it up, it seemed Kakashi was determined to defeat that other boy first. Like the third Hokage, Tsukumo hoped the competition would build a bond between the two. Alright, you've got the basics down. I'll teach you the Hatake clan's secret taijutsu, the 1,000 Years of Death. Just kidding. Of course, I'll teach you swordsmanship. Later that night, Kagami finished his taijutsu training and had just left the training grounds when an Uchiha clan member appeared. Kagami, the elder wants to see you. The Uchiha clan wasn't like the Hyuga, where a few branch families held more power than the clan leader. Generally, the Uchiha clan leader was the highest authority. But Fugaku had only recently become the clan head and was still young, so many decisions were made by an elder from the previous generation. Similar to the future relationship between the Third Hokage and Minato Namikaze. This clan elder was from the radical faction, advocating for the Uchiha's rightful place through force. Having visited the elder's estate before, Kagami waited in the living room. Soon, a lean man with a scarred face, around his 50s, appeared. Uchiha Jinhi, the hawkish leader of the Uchiha. The Uchiha never followed the weak. If Fugaku hadn't awakened the Mangekyo, Jinhi would have been the clan's strongest. Elder Jinhi. After a simple greeting, Kagami sat down calmly. Jinhi nodded in approval. He was pleased with this younger Uchiha. Cold, decisive, proud, his ideal Uchiha cub. A lot like the Uchiha Izuna he admired. I heard about what happened at the academy. You did well, Kagami. And you've seen the third Hokage. What are your thoughts? After a moment of silence, Kagami answered. He's an outstanding ninja with remarkable leadership. Kind, with formidable strength. A fair assessment. Jinhi nodded. Good, you haven't been swayed by ignorant clan members who see him as a useless old man. Jinhi said solemnly. While I have many grievances with Sarutobi Hiruzen, I must admit, among our generation, only he is worthy of being the third Hokage. Your grandfather had a chance once. Unfortunately. Kagami shook his head, judging his namesake ancestor. Even if he hadn't passed, he wouldn't have competed for the Hokage title. True enough. Kagami, you already have the mindset of a leader. Sarutobi Hiruzen is already considering retirement. The fourth Hokage may be one of the Sannin. As for your age, we should aim for the fifth. Just as Jinhi was about to continue, Kagami got up and said, Elder, is this clan meeting talk the reason you called me here? First, you aimed for the second Hokage during the first's time, then the fifth during the third's. Always hoping for the next time. From my view. Kagami looked Jinhi straight in the eye, unafraid. You're no different from Fugaku. I'm leaving. Save your grievances for the clan meeting. Wait. Jinhee's expression remained calm as he said, "From the sound of it, you want to aim for the fourth?" "No, I'm not interested in being Hokage." Kagami turned around and replied, "Since when did the Uchiha need the Hokage's title to prove themselves?" "Elder Jinhee, I despise the weakness in our clan's mentality, including yours. I appreciate your guidance, but don't expect me to follow your path, nor do I need your lectures." With that, Kagami turned away and walked towards the entrance, stopping when he heard Jinhee's voice. "Tomorrow, I'll wait for you at the training grounds to teach you all my jutsu. I might not have the right to lecture you, but let me be of some use. For the future of the Uchiha." Kagami paused. "I understand." Under the moonlight, Kagami walked through the clan's grounds as some shops prepared to close. "Kagami. Enjoying school. I heard you defeated the Hatake prodigy." "Haha, that's our Kagami. Be sure to stop by my shop tomorrow morning. I'll have some red bean soup ready for you." Along the way, clan members greeted him warmly. Kagami responded with a smile, completely different from his cold attitude with Jinhee. The Uchiha's nature, influenced by their dojutsu, made the strong more solitary and aloof. But ordinary Uchiha were no different from anyone else. Including those who hadn't awakened their Sharingan, there were over 2,000 of them. Obito. Itachi. I'm a terrible person, yet even I can't imagine. How could anyone harm these people? Neighbors, elders, women, children, with whom they share blood. When he got home, his grandmother was cradling little Shisui. Shisui's parents had died shortly after his birth, leaving only the three of them in this household. Compared to most orphan ninjas, Uchiha orphans lived a much better life. Kagami was adopted, and others were taken care of by fellow clan members if they were less fortunate. Even the second Hokage acknowledged that the Uchiha had a greater capacity for love than the Senju. Lost love turns to hatred. Then the Uchiha should never lose their love. I'll protect the fate of this clan. Grandma, I'm home. Chapter 6. Release. Your chakra nature affinities are fire, lightning, and earth. Including the Yin release from your Sharingan, you naturally have 4 chakra types, Jinhee said, taking the chakra test paper. Not bad. These attributes are well suited to learning our clan's techniques. This guy is about as strong as a special grade sorcerer. Sukuna's voice echoed in Kagami's mind. In his mental space, Sukuna had finally gained 2 hours of perception of the outside world each day. Just like you, Kagami replied. Kid. I'm only rated special grade because that's the highest level. I know. So, how would you compare him to your fingers? Kagami only granted Sukuna a view of the outside as a way to measure his strength. Sukuna felt a bit disrespected by Kagami's remark. But after years of this, he was somewhat used to it. 3 fingers, maybe. But kid, I'm way beyond just 20 fingers now, I've already. Ignoring Sukuna's rambling, Kagami focused on Jinhee. Jinhee wasn't an ordinary 3-tomo user. He was likely the strongest Uchiha under the Mangekyo level. Kagami used to hate comparing power across universes, but now, deeply entrenched in it, he had no choice. Sukuna could now be considered at his peak, capable of spatial slashing. Compared to Kurama, with both Yin and Yang, that was unrealistic to test. Konoha would never allow a Uchiha near Kurama after past experiences. Fire release and the Sharingan are the foundations of the Uchiha survival during the Warring States era. I don't know any lightning release jutsu, and I'll teach you some simple earth release later. You've already learned the Great Fireball technique, so now I'll teach you the Great Dragon Fire technique. While the Great Fireball mainly obscures the enemy's vision and locks down their position, the Great Dragon Fire is a high-speed flame attack meant to finish the opponent in one hit. Watch carefully. Jinhee slowed his movements, glancing at Kagami and noticing that he had already activated his Sharingan. He nodded in approval. No need to remind him to activate the Sharingan to observe chakra flow. Good. Serpent, dragon, hare, tiger. Upon completing the seals, a flame in the shape of a dragon shot forward at high speed, creating a massive explosion in the lake center. It's best to use this technique with the Sharingan, as it increases the chance of hitting the enemy. After a few attempts, Kagami performed the seals and gathered his chakra. Boom! A rapid flame shot out, creating a dragon fire slightly smaller than Jinhee's, but still impressive. Excellent. That's the spirit. Even the usually stern Jinhee couldn't help but smile. I'll teach you the next fire technique. No need for now, Kagami shook his head. I still need to practice this one. Rushing won't get me anywhere. Once I've fully mastered this, I'll learn the next. Jinhee thought for a moment and laughed. Patience, not something you'd expect from someone your age. Practice is indeed important. Go on and practice, and if you have questions, ask me. It's just a matter of getting familiar. I can practice it during the day too. Kagami then pulled out the short sword Jinhee had given him. Shirayuki. Elder Jinhee, may I ask you to guide me in swordsmanship? In the ninja world, there was no clear distinction between swords and blades. Even if one used a blade, it was referred to as swordsmanship. Almost forgot. Your swordsmanship talent surpasses even your fire release skills. Jinhee took out his long sword and nodded. Go ahead, you can attack whenever you're ready. Swish. The moment he spoke, Kagami lunged forward, drawing Shirayuki in a flash of cold light. Clang. Blocking Kagami's strike, Jinhee commented, your speed and timing are good, and your strength is comparable to the Chunin in our clan. Kagami, you're truly a genius, comparable to our ancestors. Kagami knew who Jinhee was comparing him to, UCHIHA Izuna. But Izuna's most memorable identity was merely being Madara's brother. Kagami's Sharingan flashed red. I don't want to just match my ancestors. I'm going to surpass them. With a thrust, Kagami aimed Shirayuki straight at Jinhee's throat. Though Kagami was no match for Jinhee, he fought with full effort, using one lethal strike after another. Jinhee remained calm, sidestepping to avoid the fierce blow. With a smooth counter, he swung his long sword toward Kagami's arm. Kagami turned to block, their blades clashing with a loud clang and sparks flying. The training ground by the lake was filled with constant flashes of steel. Kagami's attacks grew faster, while Jinhee defended seamlessly, occasionally countering. Just as Jinhee began to relax, Kagami, who had been holding the sword with both hands, suddenly freed one hand. He aimed his left hand at Jinhee's face, fingers extended. Not good. Years of battle experience told Jinhee he was in danger. His eyes flashed with the 3-tomo Sharingan. Release. Shing! An invisible slash swept past, and Jinhee narrowly avoided a terrifying cut that could have taken half his face. But a clear line of blood appeared on his face, crimson droplets trickling down. What was that? It was an invisible blade, almost like a wind blade he'd encountered before. But that was an A-rank wind release jutsu. Where had Kagami learned it? And there was no sound of wind. If it were a wind blade, the 3-tomo Sharingan could have easily avoided it. After the attack, Kagami was exhausted and collapsed on the ground. His body was still too weak. Without accounting for his previous jutsu, he estimated he could only perform 3 to 4 release slashes with full effort. Sukuna's basic ability, when pushed to its limits, involved slashes that could cut through space itself. This is my secret technique slash that I developed. Humph, it's just stolen from my power. Sukuna scoffed. Sure, but the point is, I'm the one using it. After a moment's thought, Jinhee sighed. Kagami, using such a dangerous jutsu without warning me? Kagami laughed sheepishly. I trusted that Elder Jinhee could handle it. Honestly, if I didn't have the Sharingan, stopping this invisible slash would be extremely difficult. I won't ask how you learned this ability, but I suggest you keep it as a hidden trump card. Don't use it lightly. This jutsu, if unexpected, could kill even an elite jonin. Ninjas are notorious for high offense and low defense. Even a kunai could kill a top-tier ninja like Hashirama Senju. Sukuna's slash was like a kienzan, a slicing attack highly effective against physically vulnerable ninjas. Barring the exceptional and a few Mangekyo users, Sukuna could likely wipe out the entire ninja world. Elder Jinhee, my body is too weak. I'd like to undergo medicinal baths. Alongside regular training, medicinal baths were essential for improving physical fitness. However, such treatments took years to show significant effects, and even the Uchiha had limited resources for them. They had to exchange with other clans for medicinal herbs, a tedious process. The most recent person to undergo such treatment was Fugaku when he was young. This was also why Kagami revealed release. By demonstrating his value, he could prompt Jinhee to invest more in him. Even in a close-knit clan, they wouldn't invest limitlessly without seeing one's value. Jinhee pondered, touching the cut on his face. Fine. But the medicinal bath will take at least 2 years, and you'll need it daily without interruption. This means you won't be able to graduate early or take on missions. Huh? When did I ever say I wanted to graduate early? Kagami laughed. Having 3 years of valuable training time. Only a fool would waste it working for those old geezers. You're right. Chapter 7. Mission or Comrades Konoha Year 43. A secret mission had somehow become public knowledge. Tsukumo Hatake abandoned a mission to save his comrades. At the Ninja Academy. Kakashi had been training hard these past 2 years, yet he still couldn't surpass that one person. He even felt that the gap between them was widening rather than shrinking over time. Sometimes, he didn't understand why Kagami didn't graduate early. His strength was clearly beyond that of the academy teachers. But right now, Kakashi had no thoughts of challenging Uchiha Kagami. Father. Kakashi had never seen his father so defeated, so lifeless. Without knowing why, he found himself standing under the tree where Kagami was eating his lunch. Kagami. Which is more important, comrades or the mission? Kagami swallowed a bite of chicken and looked up at the lost Kakashi. He had heard about Tsukumo Hatake's situation, and this internal conflict within Konoha was something he was pleased to see. Let it stir. The fewer green onions left standing, the easier it would be to deal with them. Obviously, the mission is more important. We're ninjas, after all. Kakashi's face showed conflict. This was the answer most people would give, even what he believed himself. Then, if a mission requires abandoning comrades, what should be done? Setting down his lunchbox, Kagami answered indifferently. It depends on the mission's importance and the level of the comrades. If you're talking about your father's situation, then I think he was wrong. Kakashi looked down, dejected. You think so too? Of course. As a powerful ninja, he should never have let a group of weak people judge him. If he had just eliminated a few of the loudest villagers, there wouldn't have been any controversy. My father would never harm defenseless villagers. No, he's about to. After 2 years of growth and the added benefits of medicinal baths, Kagami was slightly taller than Kakashi. He stood up and grabbed Kakashi's hair, forcing him to meet his gaze. Your father is weak. His ideals fell apart, so he let himself sink. If he had courage, he should have directed his blade at those behind it all, not at the weakest target. What do you mean? Kagami's lips curved up slightly. He wondered if Tsukumo Hatake could become an ally. From his outsider's perspective, Tsukumo's death wasn't just due to villagers' criticism. He wasn't that fragile. What truly led Tsukumo to take his own life was the betrayal of his lifelong belief in the will of fire. The Konoha leaders, who preached the importance of comrades time and time again, allowed him to be humiliated, clearly showing their stance. The Hatake clan was originally a samurai family from the Warring States period, and Tsukumo was more like a samurai than a ninja. He committed suicide because he realized he had devoted himself to the wrong people. His beliefs had crumbled. Lacking the courage to confront the Third Hokage and others, he chose to end his own life. Let me be clear, Kagami said, shaking Kakashi by the hair. It was probably the only time Kakashi wouldn't explode over it. Touching his hair, a nice texture. Your father wants to end his life. Instead of wandering around asking people questions, why not go see him? Kakashi's eyes widened in shock. He hadn't even considered that possibility. The situation was indeed severe, but he never imagined his father might take his own life over it. Breaking free from Kagami's grip, he bolted out of the academy without a word. Watching Kakashi's retreating figure, Kagami narrowed his eyes. He wouldn't put too much effort into saving Tsukumo. If Kakashi couldn't convince him, then so be it. If he survived, he likely wouldn't align himself with the Third Hokage and his supporters anymore. Obito and Rin, both concerned about Kakashi, approached. Although he really didn't want to talk to Kagami, Obito asked anyway, for Kakashi's sake. Kagami, what did you say to Kakashi? Kagami, did something happen to Kakashi? Glancing at them, Kagami turned to Obito and asked, Goggles, if a mission required sacrificing a clan member, what would you choose? Isn't that obvious? I wouldn't sacrifice a clan member. I'd complete the mission without hurting anyone from the clan. It must be said, time and experience shape a person. Obito was one of the kindest Uchihas, and Madara saw this, choosing him as his successor. An Uchiha with such deep emotions, if they fell into darkness, would be terrifying indeed. And you, Rin? Kagami asked, looking at Rin Noera. After thinking for a moment, Rin smiled. If the mission required a sacrifice, I'd want it to be me. Such pure will of fire. Rin. I'll protect you no matter what. The will of fire isn't about right or wrong. It's about the actions of those who uphold it. Sacrificing oneself for the next generation's peace is noble. But many leaders forget that original purpose, even Hashirama Senju. He built the village to protect children, yet later, he was willing to kill his best friend and even children to protect it. Life's choices are never perfect, and Madara left because he saw that. A victory without sacrifices is impossible, and will inevitably breed resentment. So Kagami, what about you? Obito gathered the courage to ask. Between a mission and the clan, what would you choose? If one side had to be sacrificed, I'd kill whoever issued the mission, Kagami answered bluntly. That's just like you. Wait, that's not what we asked. We were talking about Kakashi. Kagami shook his head. It doesn't matter. Either choice is both right and wrong. That's hard to understand. Well, you're an idiot with goggles, so not understanding is normal. Fine, call me Goggles, but why add idiot? Can't you just call me by my name? Maybe when you have eyes like mine, I'll consider it. Kagami's three-tomo Sharingan spun slowly, the intense dojutsu knocking Obito unconscious. Again, it's happening again. He groaned before passing out. Every few days, Kagami would knock him out with his dojutsu. Big deal, Sharingan. Was there a need to show off like that? Kagami did enjoy showing off, but he wasn't using the Sharingan on Obito so often just for the sake of it. Obito was the key to connecting with Madara and those white Zetsu. With each injection of his power through a transfer seal, bit by bit, one day, he would finally meet the legendary ninja. Obito, you're just a messenger. Chapter 8, Choice during class time now. Uchiha Kagami mostly just took naps. Listening to the teacher's lectures made for better quality sleep, allowing him to focus entirely on his training at night. The teachers couldn't do much about it. Even with all his napping, Kagami still ended up at the top of the class in both theory and combat every term. They had even offered to help him apply for early graduation, but Kagami wasn't interested. The kids here were entertaining, the lunches were good, and the naps were restful. Why graduate? Becoming a genin would mean chasing cats and dogs or escorting merchants, not to mention surviving on ration pills. Why bother? Although tensions were high between nations, the trigger for the Third Great Ninja War hadn't happened yet. That would be the disappearance of the Third Hokage. During the Third Hokage's rule, Scorpion's parents had been killed by Konoha's White Fang, Tsukumo Hatake, on a mission. Because the Wind and Fire nations were allied, the Third Hokage didn't allow Scorpion to retaliate. Perhaps the Third Hokage also knew Scorpion was no match for White Fang and didn't want him to act recklessly. So Scorpion redirected his hatred toward the Third Hokage, eventually killing him and turning him into a human puppet. When the Hidden Sand couldn't find their Hokage, they started clashing with Konoha. Other villages soon joined in, leading to the brutal Third Great Ninja War. It was the first war since the ninja village system began that involved all 5 major villages. It also paved the way for the Fourth Great Ninja War, producing future bosses like Obito Uchiha and Kabuto Yakushi. This war also gave rise to many powerful names: the Yellow Flash, the AB Combo, Yagura with Scorch Release, the Copy Ninja Kakashi. Countless strong individuals made a name for themselves during this conflict. Ironically, the most famous Sharingan user of the Third War was an outsider, Kakashi. By the end of the war, Shursui had also grown powerful. That kid. I hope his early upbringing changes his overly kind nature. After school, Kakashi, who had skipped class for the day, waited by the door. When he saw Kagami approaching, he stood up straight. Kagami, my father wants to meet you. Please. He bowed at a 90-degree angle. No matter how badly Kagami had beaten him before, Kakashi had never lowered himself like this. The timing worked out since Kagami's medicinal bath was scheduled after his training. The Hatake residence. A few dim lights barely illuminated the room, casting a shadowy gloom over the interior. Kagami walked in alone and saw the famous White Fang of Konoha. The once tall and robust Tsukumo Hatake now looked like a skeleton wrapped in flesh. His white hair was withered, his eyes nearly lifeless. Only in his 30s, the prime of a ninja's life, yet he exuded a stifling aura of decay. You must be Kagami. Kakashi often talks about you. His voice was hoarse, as if even completing a sentence took effort. Hello, Hataki-san. Kagami wasn't one for small talk, so he waited for Tsukumo to speak. Kakashi passed along your words. Kagami, your Sharingan has sharper insight than any Uchiha I've seen. I don't understand. Could you lend me your wisdom? Tell me, what's the right thing to do? Kagami frowned slightly. He wasn't cut out for emotional counseling. Better to get straight to the point. Hataki-san, do you know who leaked the details of this mission? I have a guess. It was likely Danzo, one of the Hokage's advisors. Danzo did it, and the Hokage didn't stop him. That's the situation, plain and simple, Kagami stated matter-of-factly. So because your idealized image of the third Hokage was shattered, you want to die, right? Idealized image? Meaning you couldn't see him for who he truly is. In your view, the third has always been perfect, a kind, benevolent elder. Your analogy is fitting. Think about it. How could the third help you? The information is already public. Is he supposed to say that comrades are more important than missions? If he did, then the missions from daimyo and nobles would stop. Who would still trust Konoha? Or should he say missions are more important than comrades? But then what about his long-promoted will of fire, the importance of comrades? How would the villagers see him? This is an unsolvable problem. Tsukumo fell silent. Kagami continued, the third is human, and all humans have self-interest. He wouldn't overturn his principles just for you. And besides, what happened to you is actually convenient for the third's faction. Someone with a tarnished reputation can't compete for the position of fourth Hokage. I never wanted to be the fourth Hokage. Tsukumo's voice rose slightly. Whether you wanted to or not doesn't matter. What matters is that you have the capability. Kagami's cold gaze shattered the last of Tsukumo's illusions. From their perspective, their actions aren't wrong. They likely never imagined you'd even consider suicide over this. They just wanted a stained blade, not a tool that could turn into a gem. In my opinion, after this incident, they'll probably move you to the shadows, using you for under-the-table work. What would they have me do? Kagami pointed at himself, smiling. Isn't it obvious? They'd use you against the Uchiha. We Uchiha are the biggest perceived threat to them. Kagami, we're all comrades in the same village. Why? There is no why. When people gather, there will always be conflict. Only by subduing others can humans feel the thrill of superiority. That's the poison called power. To think I'm so much older than you, yet I still lack your clarity. That's normal. You've never been educated. But I did attend the academy for a few years. We're not talking about the same thing. Kagami waved his hand dismissively, feeling he'd already said too much today. Not very fitting for the cool Uchiha persona. I won't try to counsel you. If you can't bear it, suicide is indeed an easy escape. Kakashi already lost his mother. Losing his father wouldn't change much. Kagami had said a lot, but it was that last sentence that struck the deepest chord. Could Kakashi, who wasn't even a ninja yet, truly adapt to life without a father? As an orphan of war who'd never known his parents, Tsukumo couldn't fully understand the pain of losing them. If Kakashi were already a ninja, he could convince himself that his son would endure. Tsukumo hadn't eaten in days. With great effort, he moved to kneel before Kagami. Please, tell me what I should do. Tsukumo was like a blade. Left to his own thoughts, he'd quickly spiral into despair. He was still used to finding someone he trusted and following their guidance. Kagami's lips curved slightly. It's simple. No matter what choice you make, even if it's wrong, stick to it. Go beat up everyone who says you're wrong. Show them that comrades are more important than missions. Fight until they submit. Break their limbs if you have to. If that's not enough, kill a couple of them. At worst, you'll end up in jail for a few years. With your service record, they won't give you a death sentence. I understand. After a pause, Tsukumo looked up at Kagami. Kagami, it seems you've already chosen between the Uchiha and the village. Kagami shook his head. It's not about which side I choose. It's about which side chooses me to be the victor. Chapter 9. Stop, Danzo, a 7-year-old with 3 Tomo Sharingan. How long are you going to let this go on? In the Hokage's office, the 4 leading figures of Konoha gathered. At the head was Hiruzen Sarutobi, with his advisor, Danzo Shimura, and the 2 high-ranking counselors, Hamura Mitokado and Koharu Yudatane. That child is attending the academy like any other student, Hiruzen said firmly. Danzo, I've told you to stay out of academy affairs. Danzo gave a sinister smile. Have you forgotten what that means? Have you forgotten those eyes? Mangekyo. Koharu murmured, looking to Hiruzen. With Uchiha Kagami's talent, the right stimulation could very well awaken the Mangekyo. That power, it's too uncontrollable. Hiruzen took a deep breath, releasing a cloud of smoke as his face darkened. I have plans. What kind of plans? You should let me train him. I guarantee he'll be completely on our side. Hiruzen. Koharu and Hamura exchanged glances, clearly tempted. They had lived through the era of Madara Uchiha and were well aware of the Mangekyo's power. The idea of a controllable Mangekyo was enticing. Seeing his old friends leaning toward Danzo's suggestion, Hiruzen finally relented, saying, I've already called Jiraiya back. I'll arrange for Uchiha Kagami to follow him. Jiraiya. Koharu and Hamura exchanged approving nods. To them, Jiraiya was the ideal candidate to groom the fourth Hokage. They trusted him implicitly. But Danzo was not convinced. How could we let that rule-breaking wanderer handle the Uchiha? Hiruzen cast him a sidelong glance. He trained Minato. With that, even the slightly hesitant Koharu and Hamura were reassured. Minato Namikaze, their ideal choice for the fifth Hokage. That was because of Minato's own talent, not your student's teaching. Danzo made one last attempt. If it comes to that, I'll train him myself. I trained the Sannin after all. There shouldn't be a problem. You're raising a tiger here. That brat is bound to harm the village. I can see the darkness in him. I won't regret this, Danzo, Hiruzen said firmly. That child has done nothing wrong. I'll ensure he grows up to be a ninja who values his comrades. And as for you, don't think I don't know what you're up to. Stop what you're doing with Tsukumo. The aged tiger, though weakened, still had its bite. Danzo said nothing in response to Hiruzen's steely gaze, but the office door took the brunt of his frustration. Bang. Really, at his age, and he still doesn't know how to close a door quietly. Nightfall. In the Uchiha clan compound. After stepping out of his medicinal bath and washing up, Kagami's grandmother informed him of a visitor. Kagami, sorry to disturb you. Clan leader, please come in, Kagami replied formally. As part of the radical faction, he didn't hold much respect for Fugaku, who leaned more toward appeasement. Obito and Itachi were responsible for the massacre, but Fugaku's inaction had led to it. Circumstances beyond control, not an individual's fault? Perhaps, but as the Uchiha leader, failing to change anything was its own kind of failure. No need, I just came to deliver an invitation. Fugaku, usually stoic, handed over an invitation with a rare smile. Tomorrow is my son's 7-day celebration. I hope you can attend. Kagami accepted the invitation, looking up. Have you decided on a name? Itachi. Uchiha Itachi. He's a boy. Fugaku smiled with the pride of a new father. Thank goodness Sasuke inherited his mother's looks, Kagami thought. Otherwise, like Itachi, he'd look old before his time. Alright, I'll be there. Watching Fugaku walk away, Kagami's expression darkened. Itachi's birth marked the countdown to the Uchiha's demise. 10 years should be enough. Lying down, already well rested from the day, Kagami let his consciousness sink into his mental space. Kid, that guy you saw today, how strong is he in this Konoha village? Sukuna's voice echoed. In the last 2 years, the strongest person he'd encountered was Hiruzen Sarutobi. Even in his 1,000-year life, such a strong opponent was rare. Unfortunately, his life force was already fading. Otherwise, Sukuna might have wanted to test him. As for Tsukumo Hatake, his strength likely didn't match that old man's, though his blade sharpness, even with his frail body, still caught Sukuna's eye. Sukuna had always admired strong people, especially those with pure conviction. Reflecting on Sukuna's question, Kagami considered that Tsukumo was likely a bit stronger than the Sannin currently, but not at the level of the third Hokage. And then there was the wild card, Kushina Uzumaki. A complete Ninetales would exceed the current power levels, only able to be contained through sealing techniques. To curb Sukuna's arrogance, Kagami factored in past and future Konoha elites. After all, he'd asked about Konoha in general. Outside the top 20. That old man you saw before? Politely put, he's the village head. but there are plenty who surpass him. Interesting. Among the blood-red sea of corpses, Sukuna sneered, "Kid, let me borrow your body for a bit. Just 5 minutes of activity each day, and I'll teach you how to use my power." Kagami grabbed a large lump of black energy from a gap in the seal, stuffed it into his mouth, and chewed. Casting a dismissive glance at Sukuna, he said, "Do I need you to teach me? A few more years, and I'll have you stripped bare. How are you even siphoning this?" Sukuna was baffled. He hadn't sensed any reduction in his power. In fact, within this mental space, his cursed energy was still growing. In just a few years, he'd accumulated more than the jujitsu world had in centuries. He was now stronger than his original peak, yet he had no way of breaking this bizarre seal. Even his spatial slash couldn't cut through it. Swallowing the black energy, Kagami felt that once he fully absorbed this batch, his use of release would be far smoother. With enough chakra, he might even make it a regular attack. Activating his Sharingan to aid in his training, Kagami began refining chakra with fire nature transformation. Over the last 2 years, with the aid of medicinal baths, his physical energy was about that of a 13 or 14-year-old Uchiha. Uchihas naturally had more chakra than ordinary ninjas, thanks to their vast spiritual energy. But chakra capacity depended on physical energy. Some members of the Senju and Uzumaki clans could have chakra reserves rivaling the tailed beasts. Compared to those clans, the Uchiha were always weaker in chakra. Even Madara had needed the Nine Tails as a power source to battle Hashirama for days. Thinking about it, Kagami glanced at Sukuna with disdain. The tailed beasts were yin-yang creations of the Sage of Six Paths. Each could act as a power source, though to varying extents. But Sukuna only had a yin attribute. Kagami's spiritual energy already far exceeded his physical energy, so he had plenty of yin attribute chakra. "Hey kid, what's with that look?" Kagami shrugged. "Your power isn't all that impressive. I'm wondering if I should catch a neighbor for you." "Bastard. What do you mean by that?" "Shut." Kagami tightened his control over the seal, silencing Sukuna's rants. Extending his palm, a blue chakra sphere appeared, and Kagami attempted to add fire nature transformation. The moment a spark touched the chakra ball. Boom. A loud explosion, as expected, failure. Kagami couldn't do what Naruto would eventually achieve with his multiple shadow clones. He could only try, again and again, without losing patience. A Rasengan infused with wind chakra becomes the Rasen Shuriken. So, what would it become with fire chakra? Chapter 10. I Challenge You. Fugaku at the Fugaku Residence. Now 7.5 years old, Uchiha Kagami stood around 150 centimeters tall, wearing a loose navy blue robe for the celebration. His features were sharp, with a faint, ever-present smile at the corners of his mouth. 2-year-old Shursui trailed behind him, wide-eyed and curious. "Brother, there are so many people here. What's happening?" "It's to celebrate the birth of a child," Kagami replied calmly, his gaze indifferent as he looked at the baby in Mikoto Uchiha's arms. "Kagami, you're here," said the older Uchiha Jinhi, approaching with a wry smile. He glanced over at Fugaku's family, who were hosting the other clan members, and sneered, "I heard some people calling that kid the young clan leader." The Uchiha aren't like the Hyuga, with this nonsense about a single bloodline inheritance. Even Lord Madara only received the title of young clan leader after proving his talent. And a baby in swaddling clothes deserves that title? If he grows up well, he might be worthy, Kagami responded calmly. He didn't like Itachi Uchiha but wouldn't deny his talent. "Sometimes I think your eyes can see the future," Jinhi sighed, smiling as he patted Kagami on the shoulder. "In a few years, you might be able to defeat Fugaku. When that time comes, I'll initiate a clan duel. You're the one fit to lead the Uchiha." Kagami shook his head. In a year or two, the Third Great Ninja War would break out, and skirmishes on the borders were already frequent. In the original timeline, the Uchiha didn't get involved in the Mist Village battlefield until the end of the war, and the clan wasn't unified. Although the radicals held sway, some still sided with the village. Take Obito, who joined Minato's team. He was just one of the more notable examples. Where did Danzo get his Sharingan for the massacre night? Looking deeper, Kakashi's retention of his Sharingan was likely a compromise made by the Uchiha clan with the Fourth Hokage. For 1,000 years, the Uchiha's iron law was that no outsider should covet the Sharingan. For this, they'd go to any lengths to hunt them down, relentlessly. Without Madara, The Uchiha were no longer the mighty clan they once were, reduced to targets of oppression. As of now, Fugaku probably hadn't awakened his Mangekyo, which he did during the Third Great Ninja War. If he only had the 3 Tomo Sharingan. I'll challenge Uchiha Fugaku today. Jinhi's eyes widened. So suddenly? It's not a big deal. Kagami's gaze swept over the crowd, and he added, while everyone's here, let's get it over with. I'm not ready to be clan leader yet. Fugaku was a fence-sitter, not fit to lead the Uchiha, but he'd do for now as a transitional leader. Kagami intended to step up as clan leader at the start of the Third Great Ninja War, when the Third Hokage's faction would be too preoccupied to target him. This celebration of the clan leader's child brought together all those qualified for clan council, as well as many ordinary Uchiha members. At the banquet, Fugaku offered a toast to Jinhi's table. Elder Jinhi, thank you for your contributions to the clan. Kagami, little Shursui, Itachi is your younger brother. Please look after him. The Uchiha's internal divisions were increasingly evident. Currently, the village's policy toward the Uchiha was one of appeasement, and Fugaku leaned toward peaceful coexistence. Most of the Uchiha in the police force were on the dovish side. It was only later, under intense pressure, that the radicals gained dominance. At the founding of the village, the Uchiha were weary of war and even betrayed Madara. Kagami set down his juice and stood up. Clan leader, on this day celebrating new life, I'd like to ask you for some guidance in ninjutsu. Fugaku's smile didn't waver. Of course, I'll meet you at your usual training ground tomorrow. Kagami's lips curled slightly, his smile faint. Shall I make myself clearer? I challenge you, Uchiha Fugaku. If it were any other Uchiha kid, no one would take him seriously. Just like a certain Uchiha boy who constantly declared he'd be Hokage. Did the Third Hokage take him seriously? But Kagami was different. The Uchiha revered strength, and awakening the Sharingan was a benchmark. Each Tomo added represented another level. Any Uchiha with a 3 Tomo Sharingan was acknowledged as a Jonin-level combatant. Kagami, saying this here is a bit inappropriate, isn't it? Spoke an elder, trying to give Fugaku a way out. Kagami looked at him calmly. Since when did the Uchiha care about the occasion for a fight? Has our peaceful life made you more like the Hyuga? If there was one thing the Uchiha agreed on, it was disdain for the Hyuga, their rival clan. Compared to the Sharingan, the Byakugan just didn't hold up. The Hyuga's belief in bloodline purity and the Uchiha's brashness often clashed. Kagami's words silenced the elder. Fugaku's eyes darkened slightly, motioning for Mikoto not to worry. He looked at Kagami solemnly and said, "You're not even a registered ninja yet. Challenging me is premature." Kagami turned and walked toward the door, his wooden sandals echoing in the hall. He glanced back, his 3 Tomo Sharingan swirling as a fierce chakra radiated. Clan leader, I'll give you a minute. Such powerful eyes. These aren't ordinary 3 Tomo Sharingan. As expected of Kagami. He'll definitely reach the Mangekyo level. No one blamed Kagami for disrupting the celebration. To them, whatever a genius did was reasonable and forgivable. Even the most rational Uchiha valued strength above all else. In the large open area outside Fugaku's residence, Kagami stood opposite him. I'll be honest. If you truly wanted to be clan leader, I'd be willing to train you for a few years to better prepare you for the responsibilities. You're still young and can't handle village affairs yet. I know Elder Jinhi's influence affects you, but some things aren't as simple as they seem. You misunderstand, clan leader. Kagami shook his head. I simply want to measure my own worth. Besides, Kagami assumed a stance, smiling. Things aren't as complicated as you think. In this world, the strong make the rules, don't they? Swish. An invisible slash cut through the air. Fugaku sidestepped, but the trees behind him were sliced, toppling with a loud crash. A flash of crimson appeared in his eyes. As a new father, I'll treat this as a lesson for Itachi. A surge of overwhelming ocular power filled the space, pressing down on Kagami. Chapter 11. Slash. A year ago, Fugaku had defeated Jinhi to become the strongest of the Uchiha. As the clan leader, he had no weaknesses in ninjutsu, taijutsu, or genjutsu. Clang. With a steel kunai, Fugaku parried Kagami's blade, his strength formidable. Kagami, you're a genius, but even a genius needs time to grow. Ding, the kunai snapped, revealing a smooth, clean cut. Fugaku's eyes narrowed. He knew Kagami had a unique technique to release invisible wind blades from his fingertips, but he didn't expect Kagami could do it with a weapon. Thanks to his Sharingan, Fugaku barely dodged the slash that severed his kunai, touching the small cut on his neck. "You're ruthless, aren't you, Kagami? No mercy for your clan leader." "Less talk," Kagami said, advancing with his blade. If it weren't for Sasuke's birth, he might have attacked Fugaku in secret and taken him out. This invisible slash was most effective for assassination. Realizing the need to take this fight seriously, Fugaku gripped his kunai with both hands. The two moved with such speed and anticipation that their movements seemed jarring to the naked eye. Thankfully, all the spectators were Uchiha, with many activating their Sharingan. They're anticipating each other's moves. It looked like a taijutsu exchange, but it was actually a test of the Sharingan's predictive abilities. The longer they fought, the more stunned Fugaku became. In terms of insight, his Sharingan fell just short of Kagami's. An incredible talent. He couldn't keep up in swordplay any longer. With that, Fugaku broke away, forming hand signs quickly. Fire style, fireball jutsu. Kagami raised his sword and cut through the fireball. More fireballs rushed toward him. The fireball jutsu was just an opener, obscuring vision. The real attack was the following Phoenix Flower jutsu. Each fireball was controlled with chakra, making it challenging to dodge completely. Within the blaze, Kagami saw kunai hidden among the flames. Was this like Itachi's Phoenix Sage Fire? No, calling it that would be comparing the father to the son. Fire style, as the most destructive elemental jutsu, was best countered by water style. If water wasn't an option, Kagami swiftly formed hand signs, ending with the tiger seal. Fire style, dragon flame jutsu. A fiery dragon shot from Kagami's mouth, burning through the fireballs and continuing forward. Unlike the fireball jutsu, this technique focused on power and precision. The dragon blazed upward, its intense light almost blinding, and the heat made it hard to breathe, as if one stood in a furnace. The air around it twisted with the scorching heat. It was well known that all Uchiha wielded fire. Using the momentum of the dragon, Kagami quickly closed in on Fugaku, his palm extended toward Fugaku's face. Despite the intensity of the dragon flame, it was this simple gesture that filled Fugaku with dread. Kagami's technique was of an almost mystical level, akin to a Kekki Genkai. Fugaku was fully aware of its power. Release. Shhhh. The air was sliced instantly, producing a sharp, shrill sound. Countless slashes struck Fugaku. Poof. A shadow clone. Seeing it disperse into smoke, Kagami wasn't surprised. His Sharingan scanned the area and then paused. Above, Kagami looked up to see a massive wave of fire. Like a hellish inferno, it spread across the sky, as if to consume the world in flames. Fire style, great fire annihilation. The power of ninjutsu lies in a user, and though Fugaku's fire didn't match Madara Uchiha's, it was impressive enough to shock many clan members. Jinhi frowned, channeling chakra to his legs, ready to intervene if Kagami needed help. "Brother!" Little Shursui called out in fear. If a clan member hadn't held him back, he might have rushed into the fight himself. Facing the oncoming wall of flames, Kagami remained expressionless. His body slowly lifted, as the ground beneath him was shaved away by invisible blades. In his mental space, Sukuna's 4 eyes stared intently at the outside world, even through the seal. "Kid, you're something else." "UCHIHA. The piercing sound of cutting grew louder, drowning out the roar of the flames. Blue sword energy whirled around Kagami, spinning faster and faster, forming a storm. Each blade shone with a cold gleam, slicing through the air, creating a chilling symphony of blade song. What kind of jutsu is this? What terrifying pressure! The inferno approached, reflected in Kagami's triumphant smile. He raised 2 fingers, gesturing upward. "I name this technique, Ninja Art, 1,000 blades of flowing shadows." Whoosh! A boundless stream of blue blades tore through the flames, obliterating them. Effortless devastation. Leaping high in the air, Fugaku's eyes widened in disbelief. Witnessing Kagami's ferocity, he had gone all out with this attack, yet it was destroyed so easily. As the endless stream of blades rushed toward him, Fugaku gritted his teeth and formed hand signs. Dragon Flame Jutsu. 3 fiery dragons spiraled around him, forming a protective circle. Using offensive fire ninjutsu for defense demonstrated his exceptional control over jutsu. The dragons were gradually sliced away, and the remaining blades lost their momentum. Just as Fugaku relaxed, a silver-blue glow flickered in his vision. What is that? Kagami thrust a rapidly rotating ball of chakra into Fugaku's chest. Rasengan. Boom! The powerful impact, like a cannonball, sent Fugaku crashing down, raising a thick cloud of dust. Clan leader. Fugaku. Captain. Several clan members rushed toward the swirling dust. One quickly used a wind-style jutsu to clear the smoke. Within the dust, they saw a deep crater marked with a spiral pattern. Fugaku, his clothes torn, was struggling to stand on his knees. The Rasengan's power lay not only in its forceful impact, but in its continuous destructive energy. After striking its target, it continuously infused energy, causing successive explosions and widespread damage. Fugaku's chest bore a vicious spiral wound, and his chakra was in complete disarray, making it hard to control. Ignoring the blood seeping from his mouth, he glared at the descending Kagami. That's a powerful jutsu. Kagami, you truly are a genius. Kagami's breathing was heavy as well, his chakra nearly depleted. Both wielding 3 Tomo Sharingan, there was little advantage to be gained from it. Chakra-wise, Kagami didn't match Fugaku. He had to maximize output to gain the upper hand quickly. Kagami looked up, smirking. That's classic, the usual flattery. He knew his talent couldn't compare to monsters like Minato Namikaze or Itachi Uchiha, and he didn't have the same shortcuts as Naruto or Sasuke. Sukuna would never be his ally. Whatever he wanted, he had to fight for on his own. For nearly 2,000 days since he was 2, he hadn't stopped training for a moment. He wanted to be capable enough to avoid feeling helpless in the face of fate. The excessive chakra output had left his hands trembling. Gripping his sword tightly, Kagami began walking toward Fugaku. Fugaku steadied his breathing. Though injured, he was far from defeated. Thump! Jinhee's towering figure stepped between them. The match ends here. That's enough. Any further, and someone could die, which was not an outcome Jinhee wanted. Chapter 12. Ronin Tsukumo Hatake. Hearing Jinhee's words, Kagami lowered his blade. He was willing to show Jinhee respect. After all, he had benefited greatly from him. But Fugaku wasn't quite ready to stop. Up to now, Kagami looked unscathed, while he was battered and exhausted. If it ended like this, where would that leave his reputation as the clan leader? Elder Jinhee. Fugaku said, his face darkening as he prepared to argue, but a pair of gentle hands held his arm. Mikoto's delicate face was filled with worry, and she shook her head. Sighing in resignation, Fugaku lowered his hands as well. Kagami had no intention of fighting for the clan leader position just yet, so he said, "Thank you, clan leader, for your guidance, and congratulations on your son. I'll take my leave now. Shursui, let's go." Watching Kagami walk away in silence, the remaining Uchiha clan members felt no anger over the disrupted celebration. Instead, maybe we were mistaken. Perhaps it's not just Lord Izuna, maybe he can reach the level of that legendary figure. Enough. Jinhee interrupted, ordering, "No one is to speak of what happened today. The clan leader needs rest. Everyone disperse." The village's surveillance over the Uchiha clan had always existed, but it wasn't yet all-seeing. Watching Kagami leave, Jinhee frowned, deep in thought. He didn't know about the imminent Third Great Ninja War. He thought Kagami was being too aggressive. Even as the leader of the clan's radical faction, he couldn't understand why Kagami would choose this moment to show his strength. The reason was simple. Kagami hadn't lied. He had only wanted to test his strength. The kids at the academy weren't worthy opponents, nor were ordinary jonin within his reach. After considering his options, Fugaku was the best choice. On the way home, Sukuna's voice sounded in Kagami's mind. "Combining slashes with chakra, kid, that technique of yours was far too weak. Nothing good ever comes from your mouth. You think I didn't hear you muttering before?" Kagami replied nonchalantly. Sukuna sneered, "I don't deny your talent. I just think your technique lacks power compared to domain expansion. You seem to know me well. Then you should understand the power of a domain. Kid, make a pact with me. I won't take over your body. I already have one of my own. I'll teach you domain expansion, even the 10 Shadows technique. Once a year, just 3 minutes outside. It's been too long since I've enjoyed the thrill of killing." He might actually be able to kill the Third Hokage and the others, Kagami thought. But he also worried about encountering Kushina Uzumaki. Outside of Hashirama Senju, each generation's strongest fighter in the village had always been the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. As Sukuna's Jinchuriki, Kagami wasn't confident about facing that fiery woman. Sealing techniques in this world were extraordinarily powerful. Even Kagaya Otsutsuki had fallen to one. Even the demon Morio, who was said to be able to destroy the world, had been sealed by a young girl. If he let Sukuna loose and suddenly a sealing master showed up to bind him like some evil god, it would be a problem. Sukuna, I'm not lying. This world is dangerous. Staying in my body isn't a prison. I'm protecting you. Do you even know who you're talking to? I don't need protection, you little brat. Sukuna exploded in fury. If you don't lower your voice, it'll be a month in solitary confinement, Kagami said calmly. Sukuna fell silent. If he couldn't experience the outside world, he could endure the darkness. The next morning, looking at his father, who had prepared breakfast, Kakashi let out a long sigh of relief. Father. Tsukumo Hatake gestured for Kakashi to sit and eat with him. After a silent moment between them, Tsukumo finally spoke. Kakashi. I've decided to follow my beliefs. Maybe, as they say, I'll be a worthless ninja who breaks the rules. The frail man known as Konoha's White Fang continued with a smile. But I believe that those who don't value their comrades are worse than trash. Is that so? I'll support you, father. Tsukumo smiled with relief. His greatest fear had been losing Kakashi's respect. Perhaps that Uchiha boy was right. He didn't need to worry about others and should focus on Kakashi's feelings. Tsukumo took out the white light chakra saber and placed it on the table. Kakashi, you're grown now, and I want to tell you everything. Kakashi had a bad feeling. I did consider taking my own life to atone, but I won't let certain people have it easy. Tsukumo's eyes shone with a fierce determination as he continued. I'm leaving the village. Kakashi's eyes widened, and he jumped up in alarm. Father, I want to. Tsukumo raised his hand to let him finish listening. His firm hand rested on Kakashi's head as he spoke. You have people you care about here, don't you? Take care of yourself, and protect your friends. I'll always be watching you, always loving you. No matter what choices you make in the future, I'll support you. Goodbye, Kakashi. Please, take care of yourself. Poof. A cloud of smoke burst forth. Kakashi stood alone, silent, as two silent tears slid down his cheeks. Outside Konoha, receiving the memories of his shadow clone, Tsukumo paused, sighing deeply. He looked back at the village he loved, his eyes filled with complex emotions. Swish, swish, swish. A dozen masked ninja suddenly appeared around him. Tsukumo Hatake, leaving the village without permission. What are you planning? One of them demanded. Tsukumo looked at them with indifference, speaking softly. Root, huh? As an elite jonin, Tsukumo knew about this shadowy organization. Its leader was none other than that man. Taking one last look at Konoha, Tsukumo turned without hesitation. Tell Danzo that if he dares harm Kakashi, I'll kill him. You dare threaten Lord Danzo? A few of the root ninja rushed forward, but before they even got close, a white flash passed by. With the sound of bodies falling to the ground and blood splattering, the rest of the ninja trembled, unable to hold their weapons steady. This man, Konoha's White Fang, a warrior feared on the battlefield, beyond even the three Sannin. How could such a man be within their reach? It's not a threat, it's just a statement of fact. Tsukumo's final words lingered in the air. Call it treason, or exile. Maybe becoming a wandering ronin is the fate of someone like me. Chapter 13, Light Wheel Popsicle inspired Jiraiya Double Spin Ball. The news of Tsukumo Hatake's departure was kept under wraps, officially described as a secret mission. Konoha's White Fang was one of the village's strongest forces, second only to the Hokage, and his departure would have had massive repercussions. In the Hokage's office, a fierce argument was underway over this matter. Declare Tsukumo Hatake an S-rank rogue ninja. He knows too much. Send all the ANBU after him and have him killed. Danzo Shimura slammed the table, shouting. Hiruzen Sarutobi simply watched him, his gaze growing colder. It wasn't just the two of them. The two elder advisors were also present. Konoha's 4 illustrious ones were all gathered. Koharu Utatane spoke in a low voice. Danzo isn't wrong. Tsukumo knows too much. If he falls into the hands of other villages, it would be catastrophic. Homura Mitokado remained silent, clearly sharing the same sentiment. Suppressing his anger, Sarutobi glanced at the others, his voice heavy. I trust Tsukumo. He just needs some time to clear his mind. Hiruzen. I'll make myself clear. Sarutobi's voice was cold as he looked at Danzo. If Tsukumo is truly a rogue, who should go after him, me or Kushina? Or perhaps, you, Danzo? Sarutobi was furious. Danzo was the one who leaked the details of that classified mission. This situation could have been resolved quietly. Tsukumo could have made amends for the losses he caused the village. After this incident, Tsukumo had essentially disqualified himself from the Hokage candidacy. In Sarutobi's eyes, a true Hokage, when faced with such a dilemma between the mission and comrades, should sacrifice himself to ensure the village's interests remained intact. Both the second Hokage and he himself had accepted this principle. While he hoped for one of his students to become the next Hokage, he had no intention of framing Tsukumo. He was angry at Danzo, and at Tsukumo too. Was it really that serious? All over a few accusations? Was leaving the village really necessary? This was the village where he had lived his entire life, and his son was still here. Danzo was momentarily at a loss for words. They knew Tsukumo's power well. If there were a level above Jonin called Kage level, Tsukumo would undoubtedly be there. Every Jonin was an elite of the village, but in the face of that white fang blade, they might as well be ordinary shinobi. Before the appearance of the yellow flash, Konoha's white fang held the record for most kills among Jonin across the ninja world. Danzo didn't consider himself weaker than Tsukumo. If he had to fight, he estimated the odds to be 60-40 in his favor. 60% for me. But it wasn't necessary. There were more important things to do, and if Hiruzen misstepped, he would have to take control himself. After some thought, Danzo chose not to back down and said gravely, "Then I'll need to hand over my village intel operations. Who do you think should take over? Once I finish, I'll personally hunt down Tsukumo Hatake." Now it was Sarutobi's turn to fall silent. He knew exactly what Danzo was up to. Where else would he find someone so dedicated and willing to do the village's dirty work as Danzo? With a reluctant sigh, Sarutobi said, "For now, let it be. Kakashi is still here in the village, and Tsukumo wouldn't do anything to harm us. After all, this wouldn't be the first time something like this had happened. Even Jiraiya had spent years in the land of rain." At this point, Homura spoke up. "Jiraiya and Minato have returned, and Minato has mastered the second Hokage's Flying Thunder God technique. They could be sent after Tsukumo." Sarutobi frowned. He had already decided on how to handle this situation, and Homura was talking about a pursuit mission? Was his reflex just slow? They just dealt with the Wagakure's tailed beasts. "Let them rest," Sarutobi said, exhaling smoke. "Speaking of which, I could assign UCHIHA Kagami and Kakashi to Jiraiya's team for training." At the mention of UCHIHA, Danzo's senses tingled with alarm. No way. It's one thing to have Kakashi under Jiraiya, but there's no way Jiraiya can handle UCHIHA Kagami. Remembering that Danzo had taken the blame for the mission leak, Sarutobi softened his tone slightly. "Danzo. When you hear that name, all you hear is UCHIHA, isn't it? Kagami. That was also the name of a friend." Koharu and Homura's expression softened, recalling fond memories. But Danzo was unmoved. Kagami was inspired by Lord Tobirama's ideals. This boy isn't related to him. He's merely a Uchiha with the same name. Even now, Danzo wouldn't say Tobirama had guided UCHIHA Kagami, but instead reformed him. This was how deeply ingrained his view of the Uchiha as demons was. "We have to try. Maybe he, too, will integrate into the village, just like Kagami did." Sarutobi smiled warmly. "Well, it's almost time for lunch. Since you all have family waiting, I won't keep you." With others around, Danzo decided not to bring out his classic complaints. He simply glared at Sarutobi, turned, and left. "If I were Hokage, if I had been chosen, the Uchiha would have been tamed long ago. Why didn't Lord Tobirama choose me? Back then, I was just one step away." Danzo was still hung up on not offering himself to cover their escape back then. Perhaps if he had done that, Tobirama would have survived. Konoha Training Grounds. Jiraiya approached the scorched earth slowly. Controlling a chakra sphere spinning at that speed is still too difficult, huh? He looked down at Minato, who was lying in the crater. There's a theory that focusing on the direction of your hair swirl makes chakra control easier. If this technique... Minato, panting, chuckled. That's probably just a rumor. Not necessarily. I focus on spinning my chakra to the right. Let me see which way yours goes. Huh, you have two hair swirls, one spinning left and one right. Forget it, take a break. Jiraiya reached into his bag, pulling out twin popsicles and breaking them in half. Which side do you want? Either's fine. Suddenly, a spark of inspiration flashed in Minato's eyes, and he stopped reaching for the popsicle. Either side works. Forgetting the popsicle, Minato quickly rose to refine his chakra again. If both directions work. A faint blue light shimmered in the center of the training grounds. Watching the now stable chakra sphere in Minato's hand, Jiraiya was awestruck. As expected. You're a true genius, Minato. Minato's face lit up with joy. It's starting to take shape. I'll name it. Light Wheel Popsicle inspired Jiraiya Double Spin Ball. Aside from his naming sense, Jiraiya shook his head with a smile and said, "You should rest for now. The old man asked to see me about something. He wants me to train an UCHIHA kid and Sukumo's son. I'll bring them by for you to meet later." An UCHIHA, huh? Minato dispersed the chakra sphere, smiling. They're quite reserved. The UCHIHA teammates I had before were all rather shy about expressing themselves. Chapter 14. Jiraiya Kakashi and Uchiha Kagami were summoned to the Hokage's office ahead of schedule. For Kagami, it was his first close encounter with the Third Hokage since the beginning of school. Hiruzen Sarutobi, known for his constant smoking, still had his pipe, even with the two young shinobi before him, sending wisps of purple smoke into the air. It was hard to equate this elderly, stooping man with the highest authority in the Land of Fire. Yes, the highest authority. Since the inception of the Hidden Village system, decisions of war and peace rested in the hands of each village's Kage. Did the second Hokage need to involve the daimyo in peace agreements with the Hidden Cloud? Did the third Hokage need the daimyo's approval to mobilize his forces? The daimyo mainly had symbolic authority, leading the civilians, while the real power rested with the Kage. Even when Danzo took brief command, a single glance from him silenced the daimyo. But what good was that approval? If Konoha's Jonin didn't vote for him, Danzo remained a temporary placeholder at best. Only those whose faces were etched into the Hokage rock could truly be called Hokage. Kagami gathered his thoughts and nodded. I've heard of Jiraiya, a powerful shinobi with the title of Sannin. Hiruzen smiled warmly. You two are very talented. I think you're ready to graduate early and train under Jiraiya. If you do well, you may even become his disciples. His current disciple, the youngest Jonin, Minato Namikaze, has become quite remarkable. Jiraiya. Minato Namikaze. Kagami's mind raced. Although the third Hokage had later let the Uchiha massacre go unpunished, it was clear that, up until then, he had sought reconciliation with them. Allowing Minato, who had a strong connection with the Uchiha, to take office could have been part of that plan. Minato Namikaze was highly respected. As a beacon of light, he even won favor with the notoriously protective Uchiha clan, despite their strict policies. He hadn't even become Hokage yet, and still, the Uchiha respected him. Becoming part of Jiraiya's team would be a clear signal of goodwill from the third Hokage. After all, the Hokage position traditionally passed down from mentor to pupil. Sarutobi was signaling that the Uchiha still had a chance. Originally, he had his eye on a different Uchiha boy, Obito, whose kindness made him an unlikely Uchiha. But now, both Kagami and Kakashi were struggling with emotional wounds. Kagami was withdrawn, and Kakashi's father had left him with a sense of loss. Both needed the warmth of the little sun to help heal. Sarutobi's answer to darkness? Minato Namikaze. Kakashi, still numb from his father's departure, simply nodded at Sarutobi's words, indifferent. If Kagami hadn't insisted on staying at the academy, he would have wanted to graduate long ago. Kagami saw no reason to refuse. If nothing else, Jiraiya's teaching skills were undeniably exceptional. His students, Nagato, Minato, and Naruto, all reached Kage level. Even Yahiko had become the leader of the Akatsuki. Becoming his disciple was a worthwhile opportunity. Besides, the whole master-apprentice struggle was practically a tradition in Konoha. Poof. Yo. You two must be Kakashi and Kagami. A tall man with white hair was squatting on the Hokage office's windowsill. His white hair fell to his waist, with red lines below his eyes standing out prominently. "You idiot! Can't you use the door?" Watching the window creak dangerously, Hiruzen exploded in frustration. Landing on the ground with a loud thud, Jiraiya casually patted Hiruzen's shoulder. "Relax, old man. You don't need to get so worked up. Humph. If you know I'm getting old, then hurry up and take over my responsibilities." Hiruzen's ideal choice for the Hokage was Jiraiya, loyal to the village, protective of his friends, powerful, peaceful, and sharing similar interests. Ha ha ha. Spare me, that's not a position I'd be suited for. With a laugh, Jiraiya turned his attention to the two kids. "Let's keep it simple, I'm Jiraiya." "That's it?" Kagami had expected some grand speech about the Toad Sage. Kakashi Hatake. Uchiha Kagami. Even simpler introductions from the two boys. Kagami, huh? Jiraiya scratched his chin thoughtfully. The old man mentioned an old comrade with the same name. "That was my grandfather," Kagami replied bluntly. Unlike other transmigrators, he fully embraced his identity. His grandmother, Shui, and most of his clan were family to him. Their kindness toward him was something he'd never forget. "Is that so? Then you can call me uncle. And Kakashi, too. Tsukumo helped me out plenty of times." With that, Jiraiya pulled both boys close, his scratchy hair brushing against their cheeks. Kagami instinctively wanted to attack him. He struggled but realized he'd have to use his full strength to break free. Reluctantly, he resigned himself. Exasperated, he said, "Jiraiya-sama, you smell strongly of women's perfume." "Ha ha ha, you're mistaken. That's just the smell of the world. You'll experience it someday too." Jiraiya awkwardly released them, exchanging a glance with Sarutobi, and the two old men quickly looked away, pretending not to notice each other. He hopped back onto the windowsill, beckoning to the boys. "Come on, you two. I don't take just anyone under my wing. Your first test is to catch up to me." Kakashi glanced at Kagami. "What are you looking at?" "It's not like we're close," Kagami muttered, then watched the white-haired boy go after the white-haired man, shaking his head in resignation. "This Jiraiya's overly social. I'm too reserved for this." Hiruzen, amused, said, "If you don't hurry, you'll lose to Kakashi. You really know how to provoke an Uchiha." Kagami scoffed. "I'll give him a 3-minute head start and still beat him." "Haha, I like the confidence." Kagami jumped onto the windowsill, pausing to glance back at Hiruzen. There really wasn't any malice in those eyes. Such a complex man. But then, people were inherently complex. Gathering chakra to his feet, Kagami took off in an instant. Before long, he caught up to Kakashi, not bothering to leave any parting words, merely flashing him a view of his back. "That jerk. Ignoring me like that." Kakashi gritted his teeth, increasing his pace, but the distance continued to widen. Gradually, Kagami noticed something odd. Up ahead, Jiraiya suddenly sped up, moving at a pace well beyond a typical jonin, disappearing from sight. It was as if something urgent had occurred. Feeling a shift, Kagami activated his Sharingan, crimson light glinting in his eyes. He saw it. He sensed it. A violent chakra presence. It was the Nine Tails. Chapter 15. The Nine Tails. The violent chakra waves swept through the entire forest, and a terrifying black-red energy line connected heaven and earth, a representation of destruction and doom. The strongest tailed beast, the Nine Tails. Only when faced directly with such a fearsome being can one truly understand the catastrophic power it embodies. The intense chakra burned like flames, distorting the air, and invisible forces shattered mountains and forest giants alike. "What is that thing?" Sukuna's voice was heavy, laced with a hint of excitement. What an interesting world. The sheer power of this creature even made him feel a tinge of apprehension. He wanted so badly to slice it open. "Let me out, kid." In his mental space, Sukuna's monstrous, four-armed form roared amidst a sea of blood and corpses. "Let me kill it. I can feel it clearly. My destiny in this world is to tear apart and devour this creature." Kagami stood on the edge of the raging chakra field as an astonished Kakashi finally arrived. "Only a stray dog needs a destiny. Be quiet." Kagami immediately blocked Sukuna's perception of the outside world. He knew about the Nine Tails' malice-sensing ability. There was no greater source of malice than Sukuna. Attracting the Nine Tails' attention would be problematic. The unleashed Nine-Tails chakra had already started corroding Kushina Uzumaki's skin, manifesting as 3 giant chakra tails. Minato was pressed against her, placing his hand on her abdomen as he tried to reinforce the seal. Kagami focused his gaze on the scene, his Sharingan spinning steadily. Every sealing jutsu is difficult to master, and few shinobi can balance training in both ninjutsu and sealing techniques. Even Orochimaru was somewhat surprised to see that Kakashi could use sealing jutsu. Kagami also knew some sealing techniques, particularly those related to Sharingan abilities, like the transcription seal. He had sealed his own ocular power in small amounts within Obito's body, waiting for the right moment. From his knowledge, he recognized that the technique Minato was using was of a high level. It looked different from the 8-trigram seal he remembered. Perhaps it was an incomplete version, the 4-symbol seal? For the moment, things were at a standstill. Not wanting to interfere, Jiraiya held back and asked Kagami, noticing his focus on the scene, "Kagami, what's the situation?" On a battlefield, every dojutsu user is an invaluable intelligence asset. If the Nine-Tails broke free, it would be as devastating as a full-scale war for Konoha. The man is trying to seal away that violent chakra. Feigning ignorance of the creature's name, Kagami continued, "The red-haired woman has sealing chakra within her, helping to restrain it. For now, things are under control." Jiraiya let out an uneasy sigh of relief. He knew he couldn't interfere with Minato and Kushina at a time like this. Suddenly, the situation shifted. The raging red chakra burst forth like a storm, even blowing Jiraiya and the others away. Kushina's body was completely overtaken by the Nine-Tails chakra. 6 tails. Shoo! A hand cloaked in black-red chakra pierced Minato's abdomen. "Minato! Run!" Half submerged in the Nine-Tails chakra, Kushina screamed desperately. "Leave me! Don't worry about me!" Minato held onto the seal, his gaze unwavering. "I won't leave you. I absolutely won't." He couldn't bear to lose her. He would never let the Nine-Tails take Kushina away. In the spiritual realm, the chains of the adamantine sealing chains tightened, binding the Nine-Tails securely. Minato's form appeared here, holding up a chakra orb, unwavering in the face of the Nine-Tails tailed beast bomb. Then, a soft drip echoed. A small figure entered the battlefield. For a moment, both Minato and the Nine-Tails were drawn to those eyes. It was the Sharingan. The Nine-Tails erupted in rage, unleashing even more chakra to obliterate everything in its path. Seeing the Nine-Tails up close, Kagami understood the difference between an image and reality. There were countless ways people described the Nine-Tails, each specific to the individual. To the first Hokage, its power was too great. To Mito and Kushina, it symbolized the power to suppress worlds, embodying destruction and misfortune. Uchiha Madara's influence tainted the Nine-Tails' reputation, reducing its grandeur to the role of a mere servant. But even Hashirama, the god of shinobi, relied on his wife's sealing techniques to restrain the Nine-Tails long-term. The sheer volume of its chakra surpassed that of all 8 other tailed beasts combined. Ordinary sealing techniques couldn't contain it. Konoha had to create an entire barrier system to assist Kushina in containing this catastrophe. The idea that a Mangekyo Sharingan alone could control the Nine-Tails. Kagami dismissed that as myth. It wasn't possible. Ordinary Mangekyo couldn't control the Nine-Tails. Sasuke was an exception. He was a reincarnation of the sage's son, as was Madara. Their ocular powers were already far beyond the average Uchiha. Fortunately, he too was a unique Uchiha. Kagami wasn't anyone's reincarnation, or perhaps, he was simply his own reincarnation. Through his ongoing exploitation of Sukuna, he had amassed an immense spiritual energy. In the spiritual realm, he was on his home turf. The vast expanse of Kagami's ocular power filled the space as he shouted, "I am Uchiha Kagami, here to help you subdue this beast." Beast. Uchiha. The chains trembled furiously as Kushina felt the Nine-Tails' unprecedented resistance. Without hesitation, Minato and Kushina exerted all their strength, pushing back against the tailed beast bomb. 2 chakra orbs clashed but didn't explode, as if locked in an unyielding wave of energy. Kagami continued to provoke the Nine-Tails, secretly collecting some of its chakra and absorbing it into his own mental space. Based on the original timeline, Minato would eventually succeed in sealing the Nine-Tails. But with Kagami's presence, things might go differently. As the two nearly reached their limits, Kagami finally decided to intervene. For now, it was best if the Nine Tails stayed sealed within Kushina. When the time came, he'd take the Nine Tails for himself. Scarlet ocular power surged toward the Nine Tails' eyes. That feeling. Once again, the Nine Tails recalled the terror inflicted by that man. That sensation, like being a mere puppet on strings, was something no living being could ever willingly endure. Overwhelmed by multiple attacks, the Nine Tails couldn't resist Kagami's ocular power. Before losing consciousness, it stared in Kagami's direction. Those cold, emotionless eyes. That contemptuous gaze, as if it were nothing more than livestock. Madara. Damn you. You've reincarnated, haven't you? And into the Uchiha clan, no less. Damn it. Boom. Momentarily distracted, the Nine Tails was struck by Minato's Rasengan, and layer upon layer of chains swiftly bound its limbs and tails. And just like that, all fell silent. Chapter 16. The Prejudice in People's Hearts at the Konoha Hospital. Is this your new student? With her arms crossed, Tsunade glanced at Uchiha Kagami, who was seated by the window, and directed her question at Jiraiya. Kagami was dressed in the traditional Uchiha attire with the clan emblem, so Tsunade didn't need an introduction to recognize his lineage. Frankly, due to her grandfather's influence, she held a certain disdain for the Uchiha. Having just finished Minato's surgery and seeing her beloved student stabilize, Jiraiya finally had time to focus on other matters. By the window, Kakashi and Kagami were peeling oranges. Kakashi meticulously removed the stringy parts, while Kagami simply split the orange in half, eating one piece with the skin still on. Oranges here were free from pesticides, so eating them with the peel added nutritional value, though the taste was a bit unusual. Kagami didn't mind. Haha, I haven't decided yet, but I must thank you, Kagami-kun. You were a big help. Kagami nodded politely. I just felt I could assist, so I acted. Sorry for stepping in unannounced. Kushina, who had been by Minato's bedside the whole time, shook her head and replied, the Nine Tails almost broke free this time. We owe you for helping out. When Minato wakes up, we'll thank you properly. Hahaha, you sound like husband and wife. Jiraiya teased. Noticing Kushina's hair starting to float up in annoyance, Jiraiya quickly stopped talking. A vexed Kushina wasn't something he could handle. Awakened to the three-tomo Sharingan at such a young age. You're quite the remarkable kid, Tsunade remarked, watching Kagami with a meaningful look. Kagami nodded confidently. That's right, I am quite remarkable. Tsunade narrowed her eyes, seemingly noticing something. You've killed someone, haven't you? With her battle-hardened experience, she could detect the subtle changes in someone who had taken a life. Kagami paused momentarily, then replied, last year, one of the clan elders took me along to kill a bandit group. To civilians, bandits seemed terrifying, but for newly trained ninjas, they were little more than practice targets. Konoha even kept small bandit groups alive for ninjas to gain experience, so they'd be ready to kill when facing enemies on the battlefield. Eager to get used to it, Kagami had joined these missions as young as 5. The disdain in Tsunade's eyes intensified. To think the Uchiha had him killing at such a young age. She was even more suspicious because Kushina had told her of the Nine Tails' last cry. That name had sounded familiar to Kushina, so she asked her cousin, Tsunade, about it, Madara. To Tsunade, no, to the entire leaf, that name was a nightmare. Did the Nine Tails really see this kid as similar to Madara? And with his potential, he was arguably even more terrifying than how her great-uncle described Madara Uchiha. A 7-year-old at the three-tomo Sharingan, Kagami was universally considered a candidate for the Mangekyo Sharingan. 3-tomo typically meant Jonin-level ability, and the Mangekyo, well, its significance spoke for itself. Not only that, but his spiritual power was extraordinary. Even now, he could influence the Nine Tails. Kagami could tell what she was thinking and didn't regret revealing his abilities. Konoha wasn't ready to sever ties with the Uchiha, not now. If they dared to target him, the clan would see it as a direct attack from Konoha's leadership. Especially since, in front of many clan members, he had already displayed his superiority over Uchiha Fugaku. He was seen as the future of the Uchiha. Of course, there were risks. But avoiding risk wasn't in an Uchiha's nature. He wasn't quite as arrogant as Sasuke Uchiha, but expecting Kagami to be humble was unrealistic. Tsunade interrupted his thoughts, asking another question. Kid, Does taking a life bring you satisfaction? She hoped this would reveal his true character. Kagami frowned at her. I will become a ninja. Bandits or enemy shinobi, they're just adversaries to be eliminated. Killing enemies is just part of the job, so I don't understand why you're asking me that, Lady Tsunade. Tsunade's expression darkened further. You have no respect for life, do you? Kagami scoffed. What position are you in to judge me? I don't see any reason to respect the lives of my enemies, nor do I think you're qualified to assess me. Boom. The ground trembled as Tsunade released a surge of chakra, clenching her fists and glaring at Kagami, enunciating each word. What did you say? 3 Tomo Sharingan spinning in his eyes, Kagami's hand hovered over the hilt of his blade. He knew of Tsunade's critical weakness, so he wasn't worried. Enough. Is this really the time for this? Jiraiya, unusually stern, shouted to stop them. Tsunade, get out. Tsunade gave Kagami a final look before retracting her chakra. She gestured to Kushina, and they left together. With a long sigh, Jiraiya's face softened into a smile as he crouched down to Kagami's level, looking him straight in the eye. You're no ordinary child, so I'll be direct. Tsunade's grandfather died young because of your Uchiha ancestor. Her grandfather was the first Hokage. So, well, the prejudice in people's hearts is like a mountain, Kagami replied softly. Jiraiya reflected on his words, chuckling. That's a great line. Mind if I put it in my novel? Yes, you're right. Many people in the village hold on to old grudges against your clan. Jiraiya placed a hand on Kagami's shoulder. I understand the Uchiha and the village have a divide. Healing it requires not only effort from the Uchiha but also change from the village itself. So, would you be my student, Kagami? His gaze was sincere, filled with passion. If he had been adopted by the Third Hokage, perhaps he might have truly sided with the village. But Kagami understood all too well that the conflict between Konoha and the Uchiha was unresolvable. The animosity traced back to Madara Uchiha, the second Hokage, Indra, Azura, even Kagaya and Hagoromo. If hatred were so easily erased, the world wouldn't be in endless turmoil. This conflict would end only when one side was utterly defeated. Even so, Kagami put on a bright smile, the kind you'd expect from a child. Of course. I'd be honored, Jiraiya-sensei. Chapter 17. Dinner. Jiraiya nodded in satisfaction, turning his gaze toward Kakashi, who seemed lost in thought. There was something about that white hair that made you just want to ruffle it. Feeling a heavy hand on his head, Kakashi looked up and met Jiraiya's eyes. As for you, Kakashi, you'll need to pass the next test. I understand. Jiraiya-sama, Kakashi replied without any hint of disappointment, still pondering Kagami's words from earlier. The prejudice in people's hearts. He had seen the pressure his father endured lately. The Uchiha, they'd been enduring this bias forever. Even he felt that, aside from Obito the Fool, the other Uchiha were hard to get along with. Wasn't that a form of bullying too? He thought Kagami's words were a criticism. But Kagami's real thought was, since everyone already thinks the Uchiha will bring disaster to Konoha, let's make that wish come true. At that moment, Minato let out a small sound from a hospital bed, showing signs of waking up. Jiraiya hurriedly called out to Kushina, who was waiting outside. Tsunade had left, feeling uncomfortable about her earlier overreaction. Watching Minato and Kushina embrace on the bed, Jiraiya and the two boys tactfully left the room. Walking down the hospital corridor, Kakashi couldn't resist asking Kagami softly, what was that monster exactly? Kagami shook his head. I don't know. You should ask Jiraiya-sensei about that. Overhearing, Jiraiya led them to a more secluded spot before he explained. In the war-torn history of the shinobi world, there exists a terrifying force deeply associated with calamity. These beasts of mass destruction are called tailed beasts. Out of concern for their immense power, the first Hokage captured and distributed the tailed beasts to the villages, hoping they would serve as deterrents against war. This wasn't something to tell ordinary kids, but Jiraiya knew neither Kagami nor Kakashi were ordinary. Jiraiya knew Kakashi. Although different from Minato or Kagami, he was extremely gifted and would likely become his student after a little more testing. Our village holds the most powerful of them all, the Nine Tails. That's the creature we saw. The one who holds a tailed beast is called a Jinchuriki. Jiraiya's tone turned serious. Remember, you absolutely cannot talk to anyone about the Nine Tails. The identity of a Jinchuriki is a village secret. If they weren't becoming his students, there would be an ANBU team handling their memories right now. Noticing the setting sun, Jiraiya dismissed them. Alright, it's getting late. Head home and get some rest. Meet me at Training Ground 4 at 6 tomorrow morning. Dismissed. With Minato safe, Jiraiya was eager to resume his research. The two walked a good distance from the hospital. Kagami glanced back at Kakashi, who was following him. Why are you following me? Your house is in the other direction. Ah. Kakashi snapped out of his thoughts, realizing he wasn't on the path home. But there was no one waiting for him there. Kagami, once having been without family himself, understood Kakashi's situation. Although Tsukumo hadn't committed suicide, Kakashi was still something of a latchkey kid. Come have dinner at my place. But remember, just this once. Thank you, Kagami. Thank you for saving my father's life. After a moment of silence, Kagami said indifferently, It has nothing to do with me. You don't owe me anything. Let's get this clear. If what I do benefits you, there's no need to be grateful. If it causes you pain, you're free to hate me. Kakashi, I don't care about your feelings. Then why invite me over for dinner? Kakashi felt he was starting to understand how to deal with a typical Uchiha. Don't listen to what they say. Watch what they do. Despite the terror of that tailed beast, Kagami had risked his life to help protect his village. Kagami's home was on the outskirts of the Uchiha clan grounds, a sizable property. The courtyard and other facilities were well kept, marking Kagami's family as one of the more well-off Uchiha. His grandfather's pension and clan subsidies ensured that Kagami never had to worry about money. Once he became a shinobi, a portion of his mission earnings would go to the clan to support families struggling financially. The Uchiha weren't like the Hyuga, who divided their members into masters and servants. Even the Uchiha leader had no authority over the lives of the regular clan members. Kagami had thought a lot about why Itachi could do what he did, ultimately coming to a reasonable conclusion, because he never really connected with ordinary Uchiha. A child prodigy, Itachi experienced the battlefield at 4 and was contemplating the relationship between the village and his clan at 7. That was Fugaku's mistake in raising him. Such an education could lead a genius into self-destructive thinking. Because even a genius cannot change the world or people's hearts. Those who are too perceptive often suffer and rarely meet a good end. Would a different approach to raising Itachi have helped? Maybe, but Kagami didn't have the time or energy to reform him. Itachi didn't love the Uchiha. He only loved Sasuke. It'd be easier to destroy him than to change him. Has Shursui already started chakra training? Seeing little Shursui sitting properly in the courtyard, Kakashi asked. He's not a baby anymore. It's time to start learning. Noticing his grandmother preparing vegetables, Kagami quickly took off his shoes and ran over. Grandma, I told you I'd be back to cook. You need to rest. Kagami's grandmother had been a ninja in her youth but retired after a severe injury. Although she wasn't very old, lingering injuries had left her with many health problems. It wasn't just physical. Her husband's death had been a heavy blow. These were wounds time couldn't heal, only worsen. His grandmother looked lovingly at Kagami bustling around, then noticed Kakashi. I remember you. You're Tsukumo's son, aren't you? This is the first time Kagami has brought a friend home. Kakashi nodded politely, feeling a bit awkward and wanting to help. Noticing the river fish in the basket, he took it out and skillfully began cleaning it. When my father wasn't around, I'd cook for myself. I didn't ask you. Kagami prepared the ingredients while Kakashi used the other stove, each working in silence. Kakashi was usually quiet, but with Kagami even quieter, he couldn't help but start a conversation. Is Obito's place nearby? Of course, he's an Uchiha, Kagami replied while stir-frying some greens. Head left for 300 meters, and you'll reach his house. You seem to really dislike Obito. It's not just seem to. Is it because you think a slacker like him taints the Uchiha's reputation? Kagami was silent for a while, the only sound being the sizzle of Kakashi's pan-fried fish. I guess you could say that. Your fish is overcooked. It's not overcooked. This is the Kakashi style, dry-fried river fish. Your greens are too mushy. Grandma's teeth aren't great. She likes her greens that way. Kagami, you're a really warm person. Kakashi's confusion faded, and his smile was almost visible even beneath his mask. Kagami gave him a cold look and warned, My preferences are perfectly normal. Don't try any of that sappy nonsense on me. It's gross. Chapter 18. The Third Shinobi World War approaches Konoha Year 44. Following the Second Shinobi World War, tensions had simmered along the borders, with constant but minor skirmishes. But this time was different. Large numbers of Sunagakure ninja had crossed the border, infiltrating the edges of the Land of Fire, causing heavy losses among civilians and shinobi alike. In the borderlands, a man dressed as a wanderer walked alone through the forested mountains. His silver-white hair stood out against the trees. It was Konoha's White Fang, Tsukumo Hatake. Although he had left the village, he couldn't ignore the chaos along the border, silently lending aid to Konoha's shinobi. Those he saved had all chosen not to report his presence to their superiors. In fact, Orochimaru, the current commander at the border, was already aware of Tsukumo's activities. They had a mutual, unspoken understanding. Suddenly, a sharp sound cut through the air, and Tsukumo stopped, dodging the unknown attack. He looked toward the source, seeing a few sunbon needles embedded in a tree, emitting a faint, poisonous smoke. Poisoned sunbon. It was likely a puppet master from Sunagakure. Sunbon were normally too risky for most shinobi to use with poison, since they could end up poisoning themselves. Generally, only Sunagakure's puppet masters used poisoned sunbon. Tsukumo rested a hand on the hilt of his tanto, scanning the surroundings for possible hiding spots. At the sound of footsteps, a red-haired boy emerged from the shadows, his face expressionless and voice devoid of emotion, almost like a puppet. "White Fang, finally found you," the red-haired boy said in a flat tone. "Scorpion of the Red Sand. Sunagakure's prodigy puppet master." Tsukumo frowned slightly. He knew this boy, Sunagakure's most talented puppet master, and grandson of their advisor Chiyo. More importantly, his parents had died by Tsukumo's hand. "You've come for revenge, then?" The boy Sasori nodded, then shook his head. "I've come to make you a piece of eternal art. I'm no longer a Konoha shinobi. Letting you live is the greatest mercy I can offer," Tsukumo said coldly. If he were still a Konoha ninja, a prodigy like Sasori would need to be killed without hesitation, or captured alive for questioning. Tsukumo wasn't the type to simply lay down and accept revenge. Allowing Sasori to leave was his way of showing pity for the boy who'd lost his parents. Such arrogance, White Fang. Sasori extended his hands, shattering the ground as a massive pit opened, and dozens of puppets flew out, releasing a rain of poisoned sunbon like a deadly storm. "He can control this many puppets. You've already surpassed your parents." Silver light flashed, and with a few slashes, Tsukumo cut all the chakra threads. With a series of metallic clinks, every sunbon shattered, deflected in pieces. Tsukumo's gaze grew cold as he moved toward Sasori. If Chiyo had been more responsible, she would have told you. "Puppet masters will never defeat me." Tsukumo lacked large area ninjutsu, and his chakra reserves weren't as high as some of his peers. But, as long as his opponent was human, Tsukumo could find a way to kill them. Puppet masters, with their fragile real bodies, were especially vulnerable. Even as dozens of his puppets were destroyed, Sasori remained unfazed. It was expected from a man known as Konoha's White Fang. "Chiyo already told me. That's why. I'm no longer just a puppet master." The scythe on Sasori's back tore open his cloak, revealing a puppetized body, with chains extending from his abdomen like serpents. Tsukumo's eyes narrowed, voice low. "You've completely lost your humanity. No matter how many times it breaks, I can repair it. No limit to my lifespan. Immortal art. Isn't it beautiful? You've gone down a twisted path." Tsukumo raised his tanto, but realized his normally fluid movements were delayed. This feeling. Could it be? In that moment of hesitation, a metal spear slashed across his arm. With a deafening crash, a massive metal pillar crashed down, raising a cloud of dust. Tsukumo glimpsed the figure standing on the metal column. No, not a person, a human puppet. Third Hokage. Why was the Third Hokage here? Why was he made into a puppet? "Konoha's White Fang, to kill you, I assassinated the Third Hokage." Sasori's calm face twisted into a mad grin. "Come on. Let's be immortal together." Magnet release. Iron Sand World Order. Black iron tendrils spread across the sky like roots, blanketing the heavens. A bead of cold sweat slid down Tsukumo's face. This was trouble. Konoha Border Command Post inside the temporary headquarters of Commander Orochimaru. Jiraiya sent you 3. Truly a powerful reinforcement. With his black hair, golden vertical pupils, purple eyeshadow extending to his nose, and pale skin, Orochimaru seemed cold and detached. At this point, he hadn't yet fallen into darkness, but his presence was always somewhat unsettling. Scratching his head, Minato Namikaze laughed. Sorry about that, Orochimaru-sama. The other borderlines are stretched thin, so the teacher could only send us. Orochimaru shook his head. No need to apologize, Minato-kun. With your team's abilities, you really are a powerful reinforcement. After all, you're the youngest Jonin, and have mastered the Flying Thunder God technique. His gaze shifted to the two behind Minato, smiling. And Uchiha's most talented young shinobi, who advanced to Chunin on his first day as a ninja. And then there's Kakashi, son of Konoha's White Fang, and together with Kagami, one of Konoha's twin stars. Such enviable talent. After another year of medicinal baths, Kagami's height had reached nearly 1.6 meters. His youthful face had matured, giving him the appearance of a 14 or 15-year-old. 8-year-old Kakashi, still shorter and not yet fully grown, stood beside him. Twin stars? That's outdated, Kagami said coolly. Does Kakashi even deserve to be compared to me? Right. I could never compare to Kagami-sama. I'll go beat up anyone who says that. Kakashi's deadpan response dripped with sarcasm. Kagami couldn't understand it. Back at the academy, just a few words used to rile Kakashi up. When did his attitude get so snide? Minato turned and patted both of their shoulders. Show some respect. Now, apologize to Orochimaru-sama. After passing Jiraiya's test, Kakashi had become Minato's disciple alongside Kagami. Now the three of them weren't just in the same squad, they were as close as brothers. Just like Hiruzen and Danzo. Despite Kakashi's original status as Minato's disciple, he was now technically Kagami's junior. No need, Minato-kun. Orochimaru waved a hand. The situation is urgent. Let's get straight to your mission. 12 miles west of here, a Sunagakure unit has been spotted, led by someone particularly challenging. Pakura of Sunagakure, a rare Kekkei Genkai user. Orochimaru's gaze settled on Kagami. In this group, only Kagami possessed a Kekkei Genkai. There was a hierarchy even among Kekkei Genkai. Those gained through training were generally inferior to those inherited through bloodlines. Among bloodline inherited abilities, dojutsu users held a special status. To put it simply, Kekkei Genkai users often looked down on ordinary shinobi, while dojutsu users looked down on other Kekkei Genkai users. Those eyes. A Kekkei Genkai that no amount of training could grant. Unknowingly, a glint of envy appeared in Orochimaru's eyes. Out of respect for Jiraiya-sensei, Kagami suddenly spoke, his Sharingan glowing red. Look at me with that gaze again, and I'll take your eyes out. Chapter 19, Mirror Flower. Watermoon. The atmosphere in the command room suddenly chilled. Orochimaru looked at Uchiha Kagami with a mocking smile, his gaze growing icy. Kagami, it seems Jiraiya never taught you manners. A chilling chakra presence coiled around like a giant snake. Kakashi was the first to feel the pressure, his hand instinctively moving to his short sword. Minato looked between the two, feeling troubled. He respected his teacher's old friend, but he also knew his junior Uchiha disciple's temperament. Kagami was even more difficult to deal with than most Uchiha, with little respect even for Jiraiya as his mentor. Of course, that was partly Jiraiya's fault, given how he'd once used the two 8-year-olds as excuses after his own peeping escapades. A short sword slid out from Kagami's sleeve, the blade gleaming as a glint of light flashed across it. Time seemed to pause. Let's go, Minato-senpai, Kagami said, turning to leave. Minato glanced back at the motionless Orochimaru and gave a wry smile. Didn't Jiraiya-sensei explicitly say not to use that technique on allies? Who said he's an ally? Kagami replied coolly. If you need an explanation, I sensed him coveting my eyes. Not finishing him off was already giving Jiraiya-sensei face. Lord Orochimaru is a seasoned shinobi. He only got caught in your jutsu because he was caught off guard as an ally. Don't get cocky just because, I get it, you're a nagging blonde senpai. Kakashi followed along, patting Minato on the shoulder. Don't take it personally. I'm still called Dead Fish Eyes, white-haired ghost. Kagami's actually pretty nice to you. Kakashi, you're the real kind one here. Minato gave a bitter smile, glancing back. Hopefully, Lord Orochimaru would break free from the genjutsu soon. In the command room, Orochimaru summoned a large snake, binding Kagami with its coils. He didn't intend to hurt Kagami, but wanted to teach this arrogant kid a lesson. Only after Kagami's face turned red and Minato started pleading did Orochimaru release the serpent's hold. "Kagami, remember to treat your seniors with." Suddenly, he felt something was off. Release. After a moment of blurred vision, the command room came back into focus. There was no one there. His amber eyes narrowed, a bead of sweat slipping down his forehead. A genjutsu. When did it happen? Even with a Sharingan user, I was prepared to counter genjutsu the entire time. I was definitely not caught then, which means it was when he drew his sword. Orochimaru distinctly remembered that flash of the blade, then moving to subdue Kagami. Such a terrifying level of genjutsu. This boy is only 8 years old. How marvelous. In the dimly lit command room, a serpent of greed slithered in his mind. "Hey Kagami, what's the trigger for that technique of yours?" Kakashi asked, moving in closer. Kagami pushed him aside impatiently. "Don't you know it's taboo among shinobi to ask about someone else's jutsu? That's a declaration of war." Kakashi moved closer again. "That's true for most shinobi, but we're teammates. What's the harm in telling me?" Influenced by Jiraiya, Minato, and even Kagami, Kakashi had moved past the trauma of his father's departure. However, being around Jiraiya so much had made him a bit more flirtatious. He'd even started reading Ika Paradise. Nothing like his father. Then again, a man who invented the 1,000 Years of Death couldn't have been all that serious either. So bold, the Hatake family. Minato watched his two younger teammates sparring with a smile. Kagami's technique must be activated through Shirayuki, right? A brilliant idea. To use swordplay to trigger a genjutsu. Perhaps it could be named UCHIHA Midnight's Lunar Blossom Illusion Technique. Mirror Flower, Watermoon. Kagami sighed, picking a name from his memories. He developed this technique, inspired by Marusei Kosuka's, the Eternal Genin style, as a genjutsu through swordsmanship. Using the blade's reflection as a medium, it was essentially a way to cast Sharingan illusions through an alternative channel, a small trick really. Being able to trap Orochimaru with it was more due to Kagami's exceptional visual prowess. Oh, what a plain name. I still think UCHIHA Midnights. "Stop showing off your naming skills," Kagami said, pressing his fingers to his temples. Minato was perfect in nearly every way, a saint, even in Kagami's view. Not long after becoming Jiraiya's disciple, Minato had taught the other two the Rasengan. When Kagami learned the story, he realized that Minato hadn't actually named the Rasengan. With Minato's tendency, it was unlikely he'd come up with a name shorter than 10 syllables. This jutsu represented Minato's love for Kushina, so Kagami didn't bother taking credit for the name. After pretending to practice for a couple of days, he begun asking Minato how to add nature transformation to the Rasengan. Kagami knew he wasn't as naturally gifted as Minato and couldn't rely on cheat abilities like Naruto's. He found it difficult to grasp the development of a fire-style Rasengan. Minato hadn't considered this issue, though he acknowledged that Naruto's Rasen Shuriken would be the final form of Rasengan. But since Minato had no need for such a technique, he perfected Rasengan to use alongside his Flying Thunder God technique, dealing ample damage up close. Still, Minato respected Kagami's dedication, spending additional time on this jutsu to work toward adding an elemental nature. "Why are we even out here?" Kakashi asked suddenly. "We didn't receive a clear mission. Orochimaru just mentioned a Sunagakure squad and didn't specify further." Minato clapped his forehead. "Right, sorry. I'll go back and ask Orochimaru-sama for clarification." "What's there to ask? Knowing where the enemy is should be enough." A crimson glint flashed in Kagami's eyes. He'd been anticipating this war for a long time. This would be the most brutal war in shinobi history, lasting nearly a decade. Countless shinobi would perish, and it would leave deep scars, yet it would also forge true warriors. In this war, Kagami planned to redefine the Uchiha's place in the world. Uchiha should be the first noble clan in the shinobi world, not just Konoha's Uchiha. Chapter 20. One blade in the dense forest. A group of Sunagakure shinobi moved stealthily. The disappearance of any organization's leader would be catastrophic, let alone the vanishing of a village's Kage. From Sunagakure's perspective, The most likely culprit behind the Kazekage's disappearance was their neighboring village, Konoha. Only Konoha possessed the capability to make the Kazekage vanish without a trace. It couldn't have been someone from their own village, could it? After all, the Kazekage was the strongest among them. This squad, led by Jonin Pakura, had been dispatched to disrupt the Land of Fire. The hope was that by scattering Konoha's forces, Sunagakure could better search for their missing Kazekage. Suddenly, Pakura raised her hand, signaling her team to halt. In the distance, the sharp cry of a hawk echoed. A large black hawk swooped down from above, its massive wings casting a shadow. On the hawk's back stood a boy, his pale face emanating an eerie sternness. His deep, abyss-like eyes seemed to devour everything they gazed upon. "Greetings, Sunagakure Shinobi. I am UCHIHA Kagami." Pakura furrowed her brows, letting out a cold laugh. A child wearing a ninja headband, yet unaware of the most basic ninja principles? Ninjas were assassins hidden in the shadows, not warriors seeking a fair and honorable fight. Whoosh! A fiery red ball of flame curved toward the giant hawk. Though the fireball wasn't particularly fast, it was unervingly stable and radiated extreme heat. This was Pakura's Kekii Genkai, Scorch Release. By combining the attributes of wind and fire chakra, Scorch Release created an elemental nature transformation of terrifying potency. Anyone caught in its flames would have their body fluids evaporated instantly, leaving only a desiccated corpse. Pakura had no patience to play ninja games with this child. Uchiha or not, it was best to eliminate him quickly. Boom! Kagami dispelled the summoning technique, releasing a cloud of smoke that obscured their vision. Whoosh! A shuriken flew out of the smoke, then split into 2, then 4, until the air was filled with countless spinning projectiles. Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique. Earth Release, Earth-Style Wall. Pakura quickly formed hand seals, raising a solid earth barrier to block the oncoming storm of shuriken. As a jonin, mastering several basic techniques was standard practice. She wondered why Konoha had sent a mere child to confront her squad. If Konoha knew of their presence, they should have at least dispatched a few notable jonin. As Pakura inwardly criticized Konoha's tactical decisions, a scream pierced the air behind her. Arg! When she turned around, the sight froze her in place. Her squad members lay lifeless, pools of blood forming around their bodies. How was this possible? These were elite chunin of the village. Even a jonin couldn't have wiped them out so quickly. As Pakura took in the carnage, an icy dread crept through her veins. Kakashi withdrew his blade from a sand shinobi's chest and approached Minato. "Sorry, I took 2 seconds longer than planned." The earlier scream had been from Kakashi's target. As for the rest of the squad, they hadn't even had time to feel pain before their lives ended. Minato, his warm smile unchanged despite the bloodshed, reassured him, "You did great. Far better than I was at your age." Kakashi knew Minato was trying to comfort him, but he was well aware that, at the same age, Minato had already saved Kushina from a group of cloud shinobi. Boom! Pakura's earth wall shattered. Through the dust stepped Kagami, his face displaying mild irritation. Against opponents like this, there's no need for distraction tactics. "This is to teach you the ways of ninja combat," Minato said calmly. "Jiraiya-sensei entrusted me with your safety. It's important you learn how to fight properly." Pakura tightened her grip on her kunai, her gaze darting between her adversaries. She recognized Minato, Konoha's jonin who had mastered the second Hokage's Flying Thunder God technique. Quickly analyzing the situation, Pakura realized that while she wasn't afraid to face Minato in direct combat, the Flying Thunder God technique posed a unique threat. The ability to instantaneously strike and retreat made Minato a nightmare opponent. The fact that he'd already eliminated her entire squad meant his mastery of the technique wasn't just theoretical. If she let him dictate the pace, she'd be slowly worn down and killed. There was only one solution. Pakura pivoted sharply and charged at Kagami with blinding speed. If she could capture this Uchiha boy, she might force Minato to retreat. "You're approaching me instead of running away?" A smirk tugged at Kagami's lips. How naive. For his debut battle, it was only fitting to put in a little effort. His blade, Shirayuki, gleamed like a flowing river of starlight, exuding an inexplicable brilliance. Pakura surrounded herself with 4 floating fireballs, ready to incinerate Minato if he dared to approach. "You can feint all you want, but I'll exploit your need to protect your allies." Pakura knew the significance of an Uchiha's presence. No matter what, Minato wouldn't abandon him. Minato-senpai. Don't worry. Kagami can handle it. Minato made no move to intervene. Unbeknownst to Kakashi, Minato had sparred with Kagami numerous times and knew his younger disciple's strength well. If not for the Flying Thunder God's superior mobility, Minato admitted he might have lost. Comparing anyone to Minato only dimmed their brilliance. It was something Jiraiya often said. But now, he rarely mentioned it. That kid is a true genius, Minato murmured. Genius. The word had followed Kakashi since he began training, making him the envy of the Ninja Academy. But standing beside Kagami and Minato, he realized just how far he was from being a true genius. Sukuna's techniques included cleave and dismantle. Cleave delivered a perfectly calibrated lethal strike based on the target strength and curse energy. Kagami had adapted these concepts from Sukuna, creating his Thousand Blades Cascading Starfall, a high-frequency directional slashing technique resembling a flurry of blades converging at a single point. While Sukuna's cleave required direct contact, Kagami's Sharingan allowed his techniques to activate through sight alone. Pakura's movements slowed, as if she were trudging through molasses. Every small action became excruciatingly deliberate. She noticed the change. But it was too late. Kagami was less than 10 meters away, a seemingly short distance that now felt like an impassable chasm. The blade's arc was cold as frost, its gleam sharp as moonlight. The strike appeared simple, a mere horizontal slash. Yet to Pakura, it was incomprehensible, as if an overload of chaotic information had been forcibly injected into her mind, paralyzing her thoughts. The only thing she could hear was a cacophony of cicadas, their cries maddeningly loud. Sukuna observed through the seal. He had known Kagami was developing this technique, but didn't expect him to succeed so soon. Sharingan. Is it those eyes? The cursed energy realm also had legendary eyes similar to the Sharingan. But from what Sukuna could discern, the Sharingan had even greater potential. And this boy was intentionally holding back its evolution. This body was far more suitable as a vessel than Megumi's. But this damned seal. Why couldn't he break it? If Kagami grew even stronger, Sukuna feared he might never escape. Outside, Kagami's form flickered like mist, his body turning incorporeal. With a single slash, he passed through Pakura. Slash release. One blade cicada's dirge.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.